Or
This
almost.
conference will now be recorded.
Seems like we've had a few years where
Well, it's gone.
we zipped right through.
How did we both miss? Did we both miss both budget meetings?
No,
I think I might have missed the last 2 years, or at least one.
no. I thought you were there, but.
Maybe for the last part.
Oh,
I just remember
I'm here.
one meeting.
Oh, yeah, I think
Hi,
you did
Perry.
have something,
Yeah.
you had something
Hey.
real going on.
Yeah.
So, hi, Perry.
Barry.
Very
Hi.
Okay. So I will open this budget meeting for the city of Port Orford on May 20th at 4:30. And I'm going to ask for public comments. I don't see anybody in the audience. Is there anybody online that would like to comment?
No, there is not. It's
Okay.
Councilwoman Rask.
We're going to continue with the review of funds, and if I'm not mistaken, we are getting ready to start on the Parks Fund. We finished the general fund
Yep.
last meeting.
Yep.
So I'm going to turn this over to David and Melissa. Thank you.
Perfect. Hello, thank you for being here again. We are going to basically start on the parks section, and so that is page 8, or excuse me, page 7, I guess, is the revenue. So if we want to look at page 7 for that, that would be a good place to start. What?
No, it's going to be on page 7. I can tell already. Sorry.
It says page 7.
Did you see the size of that hopper on that paving?
It'll hold up to us.
I have not left this building for crying out loud.
Build the walls.
I know, that all day long, it's just, Perry, there was just a big
Roller.
paving truck roller that just rolled by, and
it's
every time it
acting.
happens, the whole city hall like vibrates.
There's nothing
Oh,
that's
how
guaranteed.
Just a low rumble.
Put me asleep as fast as the vibrator on a roller. They took me off the rollers after a few months.
So we'll go ahead and start on page 7. We have with parks, the first part for revenues, there's not that much different than what we had looked at in prior years. So it said parks was one of the few funds to be balanced from the beginning, but the addition of a parks resource officer has caused a $102,000 shortfall. So that's actually on the next page, page 8, line 21. Is the Parks Resource Officer. So we used the current year's estimated business promotion increase of $23,000 to help fund the Parks Resource Officer. So that's where that those amounts come from. The only other thing that I thought we should double check where I put my note here.
What's a parks resource officer?
So so in the very first meeting, we talked about different ways that we are trying to move personnel, because the biggest outlay of our whole budget is personnel. And
Right.
one of the issues that we have is that personnel is sort of spread throughout all of the different funds. So for example, there's no line item that says city administrator. There's portions of my job in all the different funds because I oversee all of them. So it's not a single line item. And there are certain things that the general fund is the only fund that can push monies into other funds. So some things and some monies get locked into a certain spot. So for example, in parks, the TLT monies by ordinance drop into, is it ordinance or the law?
It's by ordinance.
By ordinance, drops into the parks.
It is Oregon state law too, but
Right.
it's our ordinance
Pushes it in there.
follows the Oregon state law.
Yeah. So basically, parks has quite a bit of money there that can't be moved out of parks. So instead of
Right.
trying to move money out of parks, what we've done is moved one of our police officers into parks. So they will actually go through and do one of the things also that we've had issues with, and I'm looking at Councilor Rask, is ordinance enforcement. And so they can also do some ordinance enforcement, this particular police officer. Although it won't be one designated officer, all of them will swing through and do more when they, do park checks and do things like that, as well as do some of the municipal ordinances.
document a little
Thank
bit.
you.
To document it better, right? So we already, Chief Hobart has already shown in the CAD or in the tracking, as they get call outs, ways that they're going to be able to, that they're going to document their parks time more often. So whether
Okay.
they're at Battle Rock or at the interpretive walkway or in any of the parks or whatever, they'll be able to.
They often have time in those
I
phases.
They
was
do,
gonna say,
it's
to-
not anything new. It's just basically better aligning where they actually do their work and have the fund where they're at pay for it, as opposed to strictly public safety, which then has to be bolstered by the general fund.
And in my
Gotcha.
mind, that helps me pass the red face test of, we know that there's a lot of resources going to the interpretive walkway area. We know there's a lot of call outs to Battle Rock, and, and the park. So it's not like we're coming up with something. It's
Making
just we're
something up.
allocating it better, and every other department feeds the general fund. So it's better bookkeeping in a way. It just, because of, we're scratching to make things work. I'm just saying, I feel like it's justified.
Yeah.
And it's
Oh, yeah.
how we did it last year, but it's
Yeah.
how we should have been doing it. So it's not.
I think this is how we should have been doing it, because the 12th Street boat ramp requires quite a bit of their time. I
Yep.
mean, so
Mm.
they do spend time in parks. At one time, as a matter of fact, I don't think they're doing it now, but they were locking up the restrooms at the end of their shift. So, anyway.
Yeah, and plus with the new disc golf and everything else, there's just going to be more people, I think, in our parks as that continues to grow as well. And so it makes more sense.
And
So,
where do the benefits come out of? Do those come out of the general fund?
no, they would,
I mean,
David, the
are they,
benefits, the benefits,
They
do they
come out
still
of
come out of the
parks, too.
general fund, or they come out of this fund?
For the resource officer, they come out
Okay,
of this fund here.
very good.
I think benefit wage for the resource officer was 98,000, 99,000 altogether.
now that we have someone online, can you talk more into the microphone? Because Perry won't be able to hear you very well. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And just to kind of further on that, all of this money movement for wages, like, it's based off of the whole package. Like, it's not separated between benefits and wages. You take that whole lump sum and then start pulling it around from the departments.
Right.
Okay.
All the benefits that are associated with that employee falls into.
Gotcha. You made me think of that the way you asked that. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gary.
Good question. The only other thing that I know that will cause some heartburn, and I wanted to call this out specifically because I heard from this committee, is the Jubilee. So this last year, or last year's adopted budget, there was allocated $15,000 to them. And then this year, we don't have any allocated money to the Jubilee. And so that was one.
But we do go back to our ordinance, which we never ended. And the ordinance said we did it about 4, maybe 5, gosh, I lose track of time, 5 or 6 years ago because of COVID. They come to us and they said, look, we got to put money down on the fireworks. So we guaranteed them 5,000 from the TLT grant monies. So the TLT grant monies that were 11 this year, I believe David has back to 15. So that will cover the 5.
Okay.
And then they'll still have the 10 for the other people that apply for grants. And plus there's a 5 carryover. So
So they don't get their own line item, but they get TLT.
they go back to the way they used to do it. So they get a guaranteed 5,000. So that'll do at one time that would do the down payment for the fireworks.
Right.
But I think in the finance committee, we felt we couldn't give them $15,000, that we needed to get back to the 5. And of course, that's going to be a conversation for this committee to decide. But
Yeah, because it's like they had the 5 locked in, and then they came last year and got another 5, and we okayed that, and then they got another 5 after that, correct?
Yeah.
But we didn't lock in the second 5, right? We never said we were going to give them 10 instead of 5.
no, I believe it was
Okay.
still.
It was just that one-time
5.
thing, and then it was like, oh, you guys have even more money. Can we do a little more?
And David found that money somewhere in the budget last year. Forgive me, I
Right.
can't remember
No,
where.
I just knew there
there was
was.
some reason.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
It was
what-
because of COVID
Yeah.
and because of the transition of all of, it was no longer like Milton Finch. It was new people and they didn't they didn't kind of get it together soon enough.
So they'll have to fundraise a little bit harder and I'm confident they'll be able to do that. And, you know, they're talking about looking for a little more support from the businesses and those kinds of things. So they have some ideas. Nobody likes when we take money away.
Oh, no. But that was the thing, I believe what the, one of the members of the committee asked was like, they would really like a solid 10. Like we can always, if they could always count on that solid 10. And I said, well, I don't know if they are going to be able to do that or not. And so I know that's their ask, but,
We have cut monies from our
no, I understand.
water
Yes.
department, from our sewer
Yes.
department. We've cut our police department
Right.
fund down.
Right.
So we're not picking on any one person.
Correct.
It's just kind of the way it is.
Correct.
Can I gain clarity on this? I still don't understand. Is that money going to come, that they're going to come from that 15,000 TLT? It's going to come out of that pot?
Yes.
Okay.
It's going to come out just as though they were an applicant,
Yes. Okay.
but we changed that by ordinance a few years back to
Got it.
make sure they were guaranteed 5. And
Okay.
then now David's got that fund to 10. So there's still 10 left to spread amongst the other people that apply.
Great.
So really it doesn't change a whole lot other than it does take the 15 that we thought we could deal with last year away,
Yeah.
which we found
We could not.
we just don't have the money. So.
So
Line 42, the tourism beautification grant, the 15,000 is what.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Corey, you had a question?
just in an effort to kind of maybe make people happy, is there a way to give them a line item for the 5,000 so that people see that we are giving the Jubilee Committee? Because I can hear folks complaining that all of a sudden nothing's there. I mean, maybe if we put a line item of 5,000.
Well, I imagine, I'll let David answer that, but we do by ordinance guarantee them the 5.
Okay.
We did pass an ordinance, so they do get 5. It's just last year, they felt they needed more. We thought we could give more. We found out now we can't give more. I mean, we've zeroed all these funds out at the end of the day.
You
So,
can.
and we've cut
It's just for
water and sewer. We've
I like
cut
that idea.
things out of their budgets, and we've cut the police department budget. It was just another thing we'd looked at. So they do get 5.
And I'm just saying for transparency, just to make people happy, why can't we just put that 5,000 down for the Jubilee Committee?
I can let David answer that because he did do a 15,000 light item last year. So Corey's asking if it would be possible to take that 5 out of the 15 and make a specific line item, go back to a line item, but give them the 5,000.
We can, yes. In fact, we have the Jubilee that we started with last year.
So it's
We
still
have a
there.
line item. Yeah, we
The
have a
thing
line item
is,
number
It
62.
just makes it more confusing for staff, and then they don't know if it came out of that one. They may put it to the tourism. I would really myself recommend leaving it in the tourism beautification grants. They know they're getting 5,000. And it just makes things so much simpler for staff to.
Well,
Yeah.
and yeah, so that transfer will show. I don't know if the transfer would show from the TLT to the Jubilee line item, but when we cut those checks would show. But I also see
I guess for me, I would like,
Lori's point. too.
I agree with her. You don't have to push the button. They're always on. I think, right?
I mean, I'm at Melba's. I hear stuff. People are complaining. To me, it just seems like if we have it out there,
I agree.
people are going to complain less and see that we're actually supporting. I mean, we are supporting it, but people aren't going to get
Right.
that.
And that's one of the main reasons we have a citizen side of the budget committee, because people hear things that we don't a lot easier. I
Right.
think.
You'd be
I never hear
surprised
anything.
by
I
some of
just
the
go to
stuff.
the market, just waiting for people to like corner me in the milk section, but always nothing. They lay it on Ann and Tim and Gary
Oh, no.
especially.
I just stay home, so I don't never hear it. Like definitely stay off
That's the
Facebook.
trick. That's the trick.
I just
I
work
guess,
at
I
home.
guess I worry about with all the push with misinformation and things like that, that if we had at least a line item, that they wouldn't be able to put this on Facebook and say, look, they've,
Got rid of the line.
taken away all of the things. So that would be my only, if we're guaranteeing $5,000 and we have a line item for Jubilee, it seems like Dina could handle that.
What do you think is the difficulty, David, for staff? Just that, because it's almost like it's a subset of the beautification grant. It's just keeping the money organized. So that's why it's,
Or even maybe just in parentheses. 5,000 Jubilee right next to tourism beautification grant.
Well, we certainly can leave it up to consensus of the budget committee. If the budget committee would prefer it to show 5,000 in the Jubilee line item, then so be it. Maybe we can put it up to vote and see.
Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I'll second that motion. Or do you want?
No, yeah, so I'm the chair, so I asked for a motion and you're more than welcome to make a motion, yes.
I would like to make a motion to change line 42 to read tourism and beautification grant parentheses 5,000 allocated to Jubilee end parentheses.
So you're saying you want it on the same line item?
Why not? If that's easier for staff.
It's not possible with the software they have.
Yeah.
Because of the spreadsheet nature of it, like the parentheses naturally make it a negative. and
Okay,
it would-
so then I amend my motion to have a new line item for Jubilee specifically for $5,000 and then reducing the tourism and beautification grant to 10,000.
Okay, so that would be line item 62, which we already have.
Yep, so on page 8, line 62, we have a Jubilee fund.
Oh, okay.
out, so.
So do we have a
I'll
second?
second that.
Okay. And discussion, or did we discuss it enough?
do you think it's possible to just move it up to be, so it's under the tourism and beautification? I mean, would that make it easier to understand that it's part of it, or does it make it seem separate?
So I think the reason David said that it makes it a little more confusing in the office is because we have 1% advertising TLT. We have the 7% TLT monies, which is for tourism and beautification. And now we're going to have a third line item, I think. And it seemed like that third line item worked okay last year. So I guess it'd be pretty much the same as it was last year. But we'll just have to explain it to staff and make sure they understand that it's not additional monies. It's the 5,000 and,
And so that you're saying there's 1% and 7%. So those are what are the other?
one's the advertising. It is, I'm trying to see which line item it is.
45, I think.
45. No,
No.
is that's advertising for the city, isn't it, David, number 45? I think it's business promotion, line 46.
Correct, that would be the 1%,
That's the 1%.
Yeah.
So,
line 46.
so we're talking about reducing line 42 to 10 and putting that 5,000 down on line item 62 for $5,000, and I will call for the vote.
But I have one.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. You did have your hand up, and I apologize.
So I totally agree with this, the sentiment of this, but then I got to thinking, is there any document, that states this for the TLT? And then I got to thinking, like, why wouldn't we have a little pamphlet that explains how the TLT works and where the money goes, and like highlight that the 5,000 goes to Jubilee and maybe the projects from the last year. Like, I'm not saying that against this, but I mean, I'm just thinking, because one of my arguments was, who's going to look at this? I've never been called out on a single line item for this budget document, but that doesn't mean there's not a hell of a lot of merit to what you're saying. And maybe we could expand on it and do, I know it's not a budget committee discussion, but that would be the only thing that I would think is, if we could make it easier on staff and do that, then I'm not against anything, but
I personally think we have a document. It's called an ordinance and it's written in, I mean, it's basically
Right.
there.
And that is another, that's what I mean. We have documents we can reference if people do come in, but
We could
So
print
could we-
out that copy and, give it to the Jubilee Committee.
Should we, the other idea is to just do away with line 62, the Jubilee specific line altogether, if it's already lumped in. That way they won't look at that zero next to it and think something, or is that something that they could come into? I mean,
That's
that,
a good point.
If it said
We didn't
5,000
eliminate,
though, it would be pretty clear.
no, because
can't-
23, 24 had 15,000. So you have
15,000,
to
it's
carry
already
it,
gonna
but
look-
you have to carry that out for 2 years because it was on the budget.
Yeah.
So we could
Oh,
drop it
so
if
we
we
could
wanted.
drop
to
it this
for
year.
2 years, I think.
We can't eliminate line item 62.
I also think, I mean, to counter what you're saying, that I've heard people that were really upset that we paid $15,000 for,
Yep.
to go up in flames when we have like water leaks and
Have you?
that,
Oh, yes.
that everything is going to hell in a handbasket and we're putting so much money to,
But Corey's concern is still valid, and it was TLT money. And see, that's the layers of it that people aren't going to like dig into to educate themselves. They are going to hear what they hear and take it how they want to take it. But I guess we have a vote on the table, and
can I have
just
one more?
realized that I probably have to
Yes.
vote too, and that takes all the fun out of it.
Can I have one more idea to do? Well, one other thought I had is what if we put TLT next to each of those lines? Would that just help keep it organized? So we know that the TLT funds are going to those three things if we did that, if we keep Jubilee in? Or, or
Not to be argumentative, but if there was other income or like donations that people put into Jubilee, that could
Okay.
convolute it.
got it. Okay, thank you.
So I guess at this time, unless anybody has another comment, I'll call for the vote.
Well, to answer your question, next year you could eliminate 62
Right.
because there's no actual come out this year.
Okay.
Oh.
I think
Yeah.
if I heard Ann right, she was thinking it would be better having it up closer to, that there, just have to look at the system to see if there's an account number available in that range. But I agree that would be better to having it closer. So
Well, now I'm thinking,
So
if
when
we put that on if we put that on line 62, it also makes it look like it's from, like, how do you know that it's coming from TLT and not the general fund?
You don't know where it's coming from, really. No, I mean, well, we do, but
Well, I guess we do because it's
we
resources.
do, but
part.
anybody that pulled this to look, they wouldn't know if it was a donation, if it came from TLT or it came from the general fund.
So the underlying question is, how do we relay to the citizens that the $5,000 for the TLT money is locked in? And is this the best way to do that? But I guess we'll
I guess
find
it's
out
all-
here shortly.
so what's the history of why did we add a Jubilee item then if it normally would come out of TLT?
Because David had to take some of it from TLT and find some of it somewhere else in the general fund, which this year, I don't believe I know nobody at the finance committee felt we had
True.
additional monies to do that. So
Mhm.
that's why it was suggested we go back to the way we were,
Got it.
which.
In that year when we decided it, we were under the impression that we just had gobs of extra money and that we could just.
Yeah.
do it.
About 300 of them.
So David has a suggestion.
300 gobs.
Oh, a couple of comments. First of all, what's going to happen next year around May when they get ready to give out the TLT grants, they're going to have someone in the office, how much is available? They're going to come up here and say $10,000. There's nothing to tie Jubilee to the TLT grants, beautification grant. Personally, I think it's best to leave that 15 in there. The staff will be able to convey to the TLT committee that there is 15,000 available.
So how about I just withdraw my motion? I didn't
I
mean
think
to.
everybody
Call for the vote.
agrees with your motion.
Yeah.
I just think that we feel like it's going to make it a little more polluted at the city as far as staff goes.
Sounds
And
like it.
maybe not so much if we had our old staff and David and Dina there that totally understood it, but it really does get confusing. It took me 2 months to get an answer for Main Street on their advertising monies because Dina was so busy with the audit, she didn't get a
Right.
chance to ask David and yeah, so it,
Yeah,
he,
it's just,
he's really, I mean, speaking from experience, how it can muck it up for somebody in the future.
It'd be a pretty good tab on the website to have the TLT explanations and where it goes and last year's
Uh-huh.
projects. And it would kind of put people on the
Yes.
hooks for upcoming projects of
Yeah.
like, hey, you guys got to report this at the end of the year. So good idea.
And
Like
you
it
know-
might be way better than changing a line item.
I
because-
like this because I didn't really, I mean, I've been struggling to understand this too, of like, what are the things, where
Yes.
it comes from,
Yeah.
where does it go? I think that's a great
And
idea.
it's
Pat.
still, you
Yeah.
forget about it and people get the 1% mixed up with the other and people get the tourism and beautification mixed up a little bit.
So just have Cindy type it out for you so you don't have to peck and we'll have it.
Yeah. Or I can meet with Joseph and we can figure out a way to try to get it onto the website.
I think it'd be cool.
Especially,
I
we
don't
just
think
start something new with these grants. And the only problem is this year, how did the TLT or how did the fireworks get their money this year?
They're already out. They've already been paid. I
Because
think
they got it they got it from last year's budget, right?
How are they getting it on July 1st? They're getting, because we're going back to this system, right?
I think they've already paid out. I know I've signed one check already because they had to prepay for the fireworks and then they're going to do another check before they get done with the end of this, I believe.
But July 1st starts a new year, fiscal year. They would be able to get their $5,000 July 1st. So what you're working on is you're working on last year's monies.
The 15.
Yeah, because they don't get monies until July 1st. Nobody gets monies until.
So is that saying that
They've been working off the 15 that they were,
But presumably they're not going to come in on July 1st. They're going to come in next January and say, we got to pay for the fireworks by February
I think they
15th.
actually pay them earlier than that.
Oh, is it?
But-
Okay.
but- So all these TLT grants that we granted.
Yeah.
We did not grant $5,000 to the fireworks.
right?
But they are guaranteed $5,000.
So we need to take another 5,000. That should be in the list of how many we do.
It
It should be an automatic, non-competitive grant for Jubilee that they automatically get 5,000 off the top.
Out of that
First
TLT
5.
money.
because
Right.
their money, they were applying with everybody else.
So they have to,
originally, yeah.
you have to put 5, yeah.
They did not have to apply any longer.
No,
So
I'm saying that's how they used to.
years ago, they had to apply.
4,500 usually, and it'd come out of the 10,000.
So we made it so they knew they were going to get 5 every year.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we did it. We made it that way via ordinance.
And because the TLT was so successful, we thought we'd bump it up another 5 for the beautification.
So then technically, it's not a grant for the Jubilee. It's
An allocation.
It's an allocation, yeah.
I believe that's what we did, right? We guaranteed them it every year.
Well,
They did not have to apply,
The 5.
right? The 5, which is really all we're talking about right now is the 5.
Well, I just hope they're not confused and that they, like what if they wanted to apply for the other 5 again and they didn't? Or I guess it doesn't matter. It's over. It's done. And this conversation too, like we're getting off of the budget conversation. I'm doing what you guys do to me and being pushy, but we are getting pretty far away.
so how about if
Button issue.
understanding that that 5,000 has nothing to do with the TLT beautification grants, to direct staff to create a line item as close as possible to the tourism beautification grant line item and call it the Jubilee Firework
Okay.
Fund.
So I think that's what Corey was
She was
suggesting,
asking,
just in a
right.
little bit roundabout way, but yeah.
So the quick way would be she rescinded her first. If you rescind your
I rescind
second,
the
then we
second.
can get a quick consent. I'm not trying to tell you what to do. You
Yeah,
were mayor
no,
way longer than me.
appreciate it.
I'm just, but, and then we can just get a quick consensus if that's what the committee chair asks for, if he chooses to.
No, a quick consensus is fine with me as far as this goes.
Pat, yes.
So we would still reduce line item 42 by 5,000, correct, David?
Correct.
And we will try to create a line item close to 42 for $5,000 for Jubilee firework monies.
And
correct.
ideally, the business promotion would be, ideally, it would be like the clump of the 3 TLTs would be, the business promotion be in there too. If that works with David, I think that's great.
Okay.
If we're not going to create.
Okay, so
problems
I'm going to
with staff.
reduce my line item 42 to 10. And I'm going to, just for not creating the number, I'm going to just write 5,000 down here at line item 62, knowing it may or may not end up on 62. Is that fair enough, David?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be somewhere between 42 and 43,
Okay. 42 and a half.
or even get it at, yeah, call it 42 and a half for now.
Okay. Okay. So that solves that problem. So do you have additional notes on this
For
fund?
parks, not on Jubilee, but on parks. So basically page 8, line 21 is the Parks Resource Officer, just so you can see where it was. And then page 9, line 78, the 163,000 budgeted for playground equipment was reduced by 78,000 to balance that fund. And that's where so it still lands at 85,000. Also throughout here, and we had talked earlier about furlough days. And so David actually broke them apart into different places. So the last meeting I said of the 12 furlough days, it would, for the general fund, so going back, it was a little over $13,000. For parks, those 12 furlough days would bring about $9,000 into parks. If we choose to, if that's chosen to do, although I don't know that that's our best course of action, just because we have a very small staff. So it's overall, it's about $22,000 for the whole budget to do that. But he did break it out into what that would be.
So I look back on my notes, and my notes said it was 104,000 total to furlough. Did I get a wrong figure, or did I?
Yeah, I took out benefits twice on that, so I recalculated it with the figures are slightly lower than.
Okay. Okay. So
So the total benefit, so the total furlough, 12 furlough is how much? 12 furlough days?
So he had earlier had said what my notes is $22,000 equals furlough with $1.50 on the base rate. So
That includes benefits. Is that what that means on the base rate?
well, no, that's not on the with also if we have to raise the water rates
Oh, okay.
with an increase in the water rates.
Plus that, plus okay, so you don't have it separated.
Yeah, so he's gonna calculate it out, but
Okay.
I guess the whole overall thing is that because there's like 13 of us as employees, even if we give the 5% or those 12 furlough days, because there's only 13 of us, it doesn't make a huge big swing to many of the.
Doesn't make a lot of money, but it
Accounts.
causes a huge amount of stress and difficulty.
I thought it was like $4,000 or $5,000 for each of you a year.
Well, it's a 5% cut.
Yeah.
So whatever each individual employee would pay, it's basically a 5% cut to our wages to do that. And
So it's
The more I
it's
thought
got to
about-
be more than 20,000.
yeah, the more I thought about the furloughs, I tend to agree with what you're saying, because we have to go into union negotiations and to say no, 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 and we're also going
Right.
to take 5%.
Yeah.
I agree that we probably should do our best.
How much was that extra?
we had,
Extra dime on the police levy would have been another 17 grand or something.
I don't know, but we were talking
Jeez.
30% or 220, I think somebody suggested.
Oh, you're right.
That's what our citizens suggested
Yeah.
last year.
So the furlough days for parks is 9,335.
right. So that's just that's just for parks.
Oh,
It would have
okay.
been like $9,000. for the furlough days in the parks fund.
22 out of the general fund, and then there'll be some out of water. sewer.
Yeah, it was 13 out of the general fund.
Okay, so the playground equipment was reduced from 163 to 85, and that was, that's my earlier comment was there's money's been taken from just about everywhere.
I'd also like to point out line 73 and line 74 on page 9.
Yep.
Those are the charges for water and wastewater to the Parks Fund, and that money going to the appropriate fund. The other thing I would like to ask to do is I'd like to take the line 80, the unappropriated reserve of $1,471, and move that full amount up to line 79, which would make contingency 18,152.
Okay.
And line 80 would be 0.
Can you say the number again?
The 18,152.
Thank you.
And why is that, David? Why do you want to have it in contingency instead of reserves? Just so I understand.
Back to the same comment made last meeting about union negotiations,
Okay.
and et cetera. Just have it available if they need it.
Great, thank
The
you.
key being the availability. Where in contingency, it's available in reserve for future expenditure.
Got it.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you for explaining that.
All right.
So can I ask one other question? Like I
Certainly.
see this huge, or no, this is not, this is like the money for Battle Rock Battle Rock Visitor Center where we didn't spend it, but,
What line item?
oh, this is like 51.
51. Okay, back to this page. R&M Battle Rock.
It's sort of like the same thing with the business promotion. It seemed like we had a lot of money in the last year's budget and then it's not really been spent, but it's coming back. So are we just anticipating that we will actually spend that much this year?
A lot of it was for the new roof on the restrooms, and
Okay.
they wanted to re-budget for replacing that roof, so that's why it's back
Okay.
in there.
That was one of the angles of rubbing two pennies together, was really to like high grade the roofs that were needed this
yeah.
budget cycle.
Great, yeah.
I
Okay.
guess that one's leaking pretty good according to John.
Okay, and then the one on the
Got a tile floor.
business promotion, that 26,000, is that, it looks like we budgeted that much up from like 5,000 a couple of years ago. I guess that was the COVID year. Is that just like an accumulating fund that's there, or are they actually gonna, does it have to stay there, that huge amount of money? It seems like a lot of money, but,
I think that's TLT
Uh,
carryover.
so it carries over?
Yeah, business promotion is the
56.
1% tax, and the way the ordinance is written, that is the 1%. I believe, did you divert 16,000 of that?
No, actually, it was 23,000 was
Oh, was it?
the amount that was going to come in this year was diverted for the
Okay. And that so this leaves the 2 prior years they haven't spent yet,
Okay,
but we did divert the monies that are expected to come in for the next budget year, so.
okay. So we don't know if they will really spend it or not, but they
Not-
could.
Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of like a little slush
Well, I
fund
think they
thing.
It's
will
earmarked.
actually spend this because they had been asking me,
Okay,
and they will probably spend this on business promotion, but this is monies from either 21, 22 or 22, 23. I can't remember. I think it's 22, 23 that weren't spent, correct, David?
I'm not even going to venture, right?
It's monies from 21, 22, 23 perhaps that they had not spent.
okay,
Because I don't believe any monies were spent the year of COVID. And then
Okay.
they just,
Doesn't it have to be on a line item if they want to spend any of it though?
it's on line item 42. Well, no, I'm sorry.
46.
Line item 46,
Right.
26, 194.
So, but the business That's what it's for, is strictly for business promotion.
Yes, the
And
advertising.
that, okay, I got flipped up on the 15 versus that. And it just, that's the TLT money that goes to parks that gets distributed in a very specific way.
Correct. That was an additional 1% that city council added.
Okay, that's where my brain wasn't
Super
wrapping around.
confusing.
But it was an additional specifically for that outside of the beautification. Okay.
Correct, correct. Yes.
But
You
line
guys-
item 42 is the 7% TLT. Is that right? Tourism and beautification, that's where the 7% drops
Yes.
in? Okay.
Well, yes, that's the portion of the 7% that we give out as grants.
Got it.
The
Okay.
rest goes into parks, if I'm not mistaken.
And so
Gotcha.
Julie-
But that 26,000 is the 1% that was dictated by council whenever it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And so if you want to know where if you go back to page number 7, if you want to know where that transient lodging tax goes, it's we're projecting 175,000 coming in next year. So that is why,
Page 7, line 2.
yes, page 7, line 2. And that's why if you go back to page 8 and you look at line 21, that's why we have the parks resource officer, because we can't
Got it.
transfer monies out of parks into the general fund. So we did a few different things, like David billing parks for their water and sewer, which makes accounting sense, which we probably should have been doing for years and we haven't.
Right.
And we have an officer that does work in parks, and it makes sense.
Yep.
That way we can.
One other little question on page 7, which is, the other night we adopted a rate for the A-frame rental that's less than the proposed budget for this year.
Line 9.
Line 9,
Mhm.
we ended up adopting a rate of 140 a month, which only brings it to 1680 instead of 2000. So we didn't really quite realize that. Otherwise, we could have I think we could have had it be a little bit higher to make that number, but it's just a little bit off. I don't know what we
I
should do
think
about
that
that.
number's justified though, just because we could say we might rent it for a day or two outside of those days, like, or
Could we?
don't we get money for people using it for the events or?
Yeah, I think so.
So, I mean, so that couple
Oh,
of
okay.
bucks, I think we could justify.
Okay,
that.
I didn't realize that. Thank you, Pat.
Oh, I didn't know. I'm just pulling it out of my hat. Like, oh, a question I have an answer. I don't even need to think about it.
Okay. Try to promote somebody renting it out except if we have them rent it for a day, it's going to be hard to have them pay a lot if we know that it's being rented for a month.
So if
Cleaning fees.
there's no more comments on the Parks Fund, Melissa, did you have any more notes?
Nope. I'm
David, did you have any other comments? I would entertain a motion to adopt the Parks Fund.
I move to accept the Parks Fund as
Accept.
presented.
And I'll second that.
And is there any discussion on that? Hearing none, I will call for the vote. Gary,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Corey,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
and Tim, yes. So the Parks Fund is adopted or accepted to be adopted with the general fund. And now we are on to public safety, which starts on page 10.
Mhm.
And I'm going to let you folks get started on that. I'm going to be excused for 1 minute.
Sure, sounds good.
Yes, Chair.
So public safety's proposed budget was estimated to have a $289,221 shortfall. To balance that fund, officer number 5 was moved to the Parks Fund as the Parks Resource Officer. That equates to approximately $98,000. The $128,373 transfer from the general fund reduced this shortfall to approximately $63,000. This fund is still unbalanced by the $63,000. Again, there's a line item about furlough days, but I don't think we're looking at that.
And this is with keeping the 5th officer.
This is actually keeping, I believe the 5th officer is, the half is gone. We're not doing the half. This would be putting, actually technically Officer 4, one of the officers, the equivalent of one of the officers in the parks.
Right, we just moved full-time officer 5 to parks, and that would still leave the,
But wouldn't it be Officer 4? Because we have 4.5 currently, and the half is,
well, someone left in between, so it's not in order.
Oh, okay.
okay.
But we still have the halftime officer and the other 4 counting the chief.
Okay.
Not really
And
understand.
maybe that's where I'm getting a little confused because I always refer to the chief as an officer.
Okay, that's where.
Right. And that makes sense. But I guess,
So they'd have 5.5.
but I think the reserve officer is planning to not be here. I think the reserve officer, based on all this, was,
So the halftime position's going away.
I think that's what the chief believes was the understanding through all of this. But you're saying we don't have to cut any positions.
Mm. But anyway, his position's
Okay.
still in here. So,
Oh, now that's a change. Okay.
so that's the bonus. That's good.
Yeah. So can you, how much was that? Do you know off the top of your head approximately how much the halftime reserve officer?
Well, it's
Generated?
only half as much as so around 50,000 would be a guess.
40, 48 something, I thought is what I saw before.
Be $39,449.79,
So about 40,000.
or it could be 80 cents. It's not a lot being half-time. He doesn't have any benefits. and
Correct.
So I
correct.
would just use 39,000 as the placeholder for that.
Okay.
And he does pay for his salary basically in citations.
Whole man. Yes, he does.
Yeah,
That'd be a wise one to keep, right? Is that what you were thinking?
he's basically the only one writing citations.
Well, we don't want to change that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the others would be able to write citations, but not as many, for sure. Because they'd be busy doing other things.
Now, if you'll remember when we first started in the finance committee, our goal was to try to fund public safety without citations. And we started with 50,000 citations in the general fund, which we should receive from the outstanding citations. And as we got down here close, we're talking to Hank, if you'll remember, maybe you weren't there, he promised that he would get that additional 50,000. And I jacked it up to 60 on him just to.
Oh, and so that was 110.
So even if that halftime position went away, I feel confident that Hank is going to ensure that they get that done. If that.
So we have the 4 positions in this part, but the 5th one is in the parks, basically.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Melissa, could you read again the first statement you made about just the shortfall, how big the shortfall was? Because I had a little bit of a hard time hearing that and
Sure.
comprehending
So
it.
public safety's proposed budget was estimated to have a $289,221 shortfall. 289,221. And so that's where a lot of because the levy or the tax basically covers 2 officers, and then the other officers were being backfilled out of the general fund
And
was
like
kind of the idea.
Yeah, and like David explained, last meeting was when our permanent tax was set years ago, 2.688, whatever it
Mhm.
is. It wasn't set to pay for a police department.
Mhm.
It was set for the city to survive, but it wasn't, a police department wasn't factored in.
But then there was the option, the local option tax,
The local option tax pays for two of the.
two of the right. So that was,
Yeah.
so, yeah,
But that's how we got where we're at.
right. Right.
And that's with the current local option. It only brings in $289,000. And that's only half of what the budget is. With 4.5 officers, their budget's 483,000. So if you're
Page 10.
to fund it with just 4.5 officers by local option only, you would have to have, I'm just making a wild guess here, but I'm saying around $1.40 more.
I don't know if we could get there, but knowing that the sheriff levy is going on right now, if that doesn't pass, we're never gonna have a better opportunity to try to sell a
We
second
talked
lot.
about that.
And I think that's why the finance committee needs to continue on even after this budget, because if we go out for a second levy and we educate the public, they'll know we're not blowing smoke. They may not vote for it, but they'll know as long as we educate them, they'll know we're not blowing smoke.
Yeah.
So they just have to dig deep whether they can support it or not. We may get lucky and they may support it.
And it's just nice to have that conversation to start of, hey, the sheriff's levy didn't pass. We want to protect the city as much as possible. It's a little-
Exactly.
And if we do that, we should definitely think about getting it onto because it'll be an existing election, so we won't have to pay another 5,000 extra, however much it
I think
costs.
David said we would have to pay for that election regardless of it's in November or May.
Okay.
And I don't think we can pull it off before May or November, to be honest with you.
Okay. No, I was thinking, I seem to remember the last time that if it's in an existing election, it's less expensive. Not that you don't have to pay at all, but.
Yeah, maybe. We definitely would have to figure that out because the last election did cost us, I think, between 5,000 and 6,000.
But it passed pretty significantly, didn't it?
It did.
It did.
Yeah.
It was like 86%.
So we got word of mouth out there.
It did. And that's the key. The key is getting the facts out there, not stating anything but the facts, not telling them we're going to fire this person or that person or any of that. Just get out there and tell them the facts. This is the cold, hard facts.
Right.
I mean, really, even if we got halfway there, or got $1.
Use the excuses we have with COVID. We all know things went up like 30%. Public safety is always expensive anyway, so it's
Yeah.
probably 30 or 35.
So anyway, that's something for us to think about in the coming months. And
But I think, yeah, the finance committee is more important after we get this budget done.
yeah, I know Ann and Gary both have already started on notes, and I've already got quite a few notes myself.
The list, the to-do ideas are
Yeah.
here. Quite
Exactly.
long.
So if we continue looking at those, one of the pieces was his original proposal was that, by collecting past citations and monies that continue to dribble in, that it would be about $50,000 just sort of for citations anyway. And then when you add the 60,000 that he budgeted, that makes 110,000. And so,
And we would have a better chance with that halftime officer than without. But that's just something the committee's going to have to decide because it is
Yeah.
40,000, but it looks like David has been able to budget for it. But I thought the last time we left,
we're really worried about keeping the 4 was
Right.
really our main.
Right.
Yeah. So
Once we
Hank
get
will be
those
happy.
ticketing cameras, we're golden. Like we can start talking about replacing the water system once we get those ticketing cameras if we put them in the school zone. I'm not being far-fetched and it's not nefarious. It's just, we can even say, don't ticket anybody that's not going over 10 miles an hour, but there's 40 people going 50 miles an hour through the school zone every day, I bet.
yeah.
We're not
So
a
with-
trap, it's just a camera. Just
Yeah.
take pictures.
Just
of
does
the
it.
meeting.
So basically, public safety, those were the major conversations that we had had. There's nothing else necessarily to call into. A lot of things that they use have to do with being able to run people, you know, to run a license or things like that, to look into those, as well as, you know, vehicles and equipment, things like that. That's where the monies come. So that's all I have for public safety.
And it is a 63, it's still 63 short, 63,000.
No, I think it's now balanced with the things
Oh, it
that
is
he,
balanced,
that he
okay.
has done. If he can do the 60,000 with
Mostly the
with,
parks
with,
funding.
it's mostly the parks funding that helps by moving that officer into the parks. But then the other piece of it is the citations that,
And we have a contingency on line 47 of 15,000 in that fund. So David, did you have anything else on the public safety fund?
No, I don't.
Anybody
I
else?
move to accept the public safety fund as presented.
I'll second it. Thank you.
Any other discussion on that? So I will call for the vote. Corey,
Yes?
Ann,
Yes.
Perry,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
and Greg, you were not here. So I think I will ask him on the next fund since he wasn't here.
Yeah, he can still vote or he can abstain
Oh.
and do whatever he wants.
Okay. For the record, Greg abstains. He just came into the meeting. And Tim, yes.
Right on time because I didn't tell him that we changed it till 4:30.
Yeah, no, by
No,
no,
I know. I knew as soon as you walked in and I looked at 5:30. I was like,
so,
but I didn't think of it because I don't call people and tell them when the meeting.
I even checked my email at 4 o'clock too, in the mix.
Yeah, no, it felt.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry you missed.
No way.
Oh, if it makes you feel better, you missed the parks fund.
let the record show that Mr. Tidy was not aware the meeting started at 4:30, so he showed up at 5:30. And we appreciate you showing up, Greg. Thank you so much. Okay,
Yep.
so on to the Water Enterprise Fund. And that is on page 12 of 25. And I'm going to hand this over to Melissa and David.
okay. So the Water Enterprise Fund was estimated to end the year in a negative cash balance. The council passed a resolution authorizing the Water Enterprise Fund to utilize the $150,000 transfer from water capital reserves so that the current year would have an estimated $106,000 ending cash balance, which is the beginning cash balance for the proposed budget. So if you look at line item 1, where that money came from was from the council passing and allowing the reserve fund to fund this one.
I don't understand. When did that happen? Or what do you mean council did that? When did that? Did you do?
I don't
We
recall.
did that for the engineering, didn't we?
Or what was that?
No, we still have to pass the resolutions for the 150 out of reserves. Correct?
I haven't seen any.
Yeah, we have not done
Oh.
that yet.
That
Okay,
wouldn't be
it's-
just an accepted part of the budget? Like, like we accept the transfer from
Yes.
that fund to this fund, so do we need a resolution?
But I think the recommendation of the budget committee would be sufficient, honestly.
I mean, that's when we transfer, like, that's not comparable, but at the port and at the water district,
Yep.
it's like, wait, that's like, oh, this is our time to transfer anything out of capital reserves or anywhere is when we do it this way, so we don't have to do a resolution or an amended budget.
You see, the concerns was, first of all, the water capital reserve and the sewer capital reserve resolution that established those funds says that the money will only be used for water or sewer infrastructure
Mhm.
improvements.
Mhm.
So we're kind of using it to balance the budget. That's why I came up with the resolution.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense then. Yeah, that makes sense.
But those additional monies actually they are being used for that. They have been used for that. Correct? I mean, that's,
You know, I see there's, yeah, you know, paying for the work on the brick grant engineering is part of getting your infrastructure correct.
Right, right.
Well, and we got the pump station on Coast Guard Hill, which will just eat that up with one check. So it'll be real easy bookkeeping wise to justify that.
well, that pump is,
And it was the same with pulling back the transfer to the streets capital reserve. That's also by resolution to transfer out 10%. But I do think since the budget committee recommended going with it, that we should be okay then, shouldn't we?
yes. I believe
It
we-
is good to make note, though, as you just did, is that what that is the intention of that money, just so that we maintain that knowledge as a council, because that ordinance was passed certainly before my time. So it's good for us to understand what the limits are, you know.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that.
Okay, Melissa?
Okay, so again, that starting 106,000 on line one is the prior year fund balance. But even with that, the water fund was still $457,000 short. If you go down to line 19, it's the transfer from the water capital reserves is an additional 100,000 transfer from the water capital reserves is needed. And that transfer will leave only $39,000 approximately in the reserve fund. This brings the shortfall down to $357,000. If you then go to lines 24 and 25, just like in the other funds, because of the large amount of water used by the wastewater treatment plant, the Finance Committee recommended that we begin billing each fund for their water usage. The billing for the estimated usage by the wastewater plant is $108,241. That brought the shortfall down to $248,714. The rate increases of $1.28 to the base rate and $1.82 to the consumption rate is estimated to bring in $76,930. The designated for reserves base rate is increased by $1 and consumption is increased by $1 and is estimated to raise $11,370. So as we talked about earlier, we not only have to look and try to balance the budget based upon our expenditures and, you know, cutting our expenditures, but also we have to look at the revenue side and the increasing the revenue side. David has worked up a schedule for utility rates. And so this is the information given for those. And here is, I did on May 17th, here, Pat. On May 17th, you want to go that way? On May 17th, I looked up just other cities around, there you go, and kind of some of their water bills and where they land as well.
Thanks.
And Perry, I sent these to you via email on Friday, I think.
Mm.
The rate sheets.
I don't think I got those. Do you use my city email or my personal?
I think I used your city email for this one.
Yeah, I'm not able to get into it from here.
Oh, okay.
So yeah,
Okay.
in the future, if we could do
You're going to be
that,
very
that would-
confused then because there's a lot of numbers that'll fly around with this. So basically, thank you, gentlemen. So basically, one of the places where we would need, because water has been the place where we have lost so much, that is where we have our biggest need to focus on the revenue side for this. So, David, do you want to discuss this the green sheet, the Water Enterprise Fund, in all the things in green?
As Melissa was saying, we spent a lot of time going through, looking at expenses and trying to get down to just basically what was needed. And from there, it's come up such a shortfall that a large increase was needed. And of course, the city with increasing block rate, you got to be careful that you don't raise the high end, the people over 20,000 gallons so high that businesses can't stay in. What I had done doing is, first of all, when I calculated the rate using the CPI of 4.1% and the construction cost index at 2.7%, it suggested that the base rate increase of $1.28 and flow charge increase of $1.82 would be the CPI increase. It wasn't near enough. It actually only brings in around 40,000. So I doubled it, got 80,000, tripled it, and started seeing that the people that were using 20,000 more, their rates were starting to go up 100, 150 a month. So I backed off and focused the rest of and I think it was around $8 a month on the base charge. Well, the water rate that I ended up with is $13.52 increase to the current base rate, which brings the current to $46.25. Increase the flow charges by $5.46 a thousand. Even the 10,000 to 20,000, I increased it by $5.76. All that together should bring in $203,000. Increase in the water capital reserve base rate by $2 and the flow rates by $1 is estimated to bring in $18,827.
18,000, how much?
827.
827.
Of course, one thing that the finance committee was discussing, can we lower this rate next year? And of course, you want to this definitely reevaluate it next year, but I'm a little concerned on page 12 on your resources, the revenue. You have the transfer from water capital reserve of 100,000 and the charge to sewer fund of 108,000. Those are one-time payments that go away, won't be there next year. So is next year's fund going to be 200,000 short? So because of that, I can't say that you can lower the rates next year.
That was what I was going to say, as alarming as it may be. This will put us in a better place after next year. It will help build back all these monies we've had to rob, not all of them, but in 2 years, it'll help build back those monies.
Wonder if we'd be better off saying we're going to lock these rates in for 3 years or guarantee no more increases for 5 years, knowing that we can sustain that for 5 years at that level.
Kind of what I'm thinking is going to happen is that you might get 3 years without a rate increase.
Right.
The thing about it,
We don't.
yeah.
No, I like the regular increases as much as anybody, Tim. I'm just saying from the angle of selling this huge jump, we could say, well, it's the best we can do. We'll lock it in for 3 to 5 years, whatever you guys decide on.
Not be able to because something crazy happens.
Well, until inflation slows down, it seems like, we're behind the 8 ball. But I'm looking at this, Oregon ranks third with an average water bill of $76. So
Mhm.
that, they're talking just water, not water and sewer, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was when I first did, and sorry, even the font and everything, but it was a kind of a quick Google search on Friday to just sort of pull in different places around that I could find. And that was the first thing when it was, water rates in Oregon. The first thing on Google was that Oregon ranks third with an average water bill of $67 per month. And part of that is Portland's water bills are astronomical.
Well, North Bend, I've been seeing North Bend this last year had a rate increase on their sewer bills of almost like $80 a bill. Like people are freaking out. We're freaking out 2-3 months ago up there when that came out
Yeah,
because they had no idea. And that was just added onto their base rate,
Yeah.
of a sewer bill. And then people were, go ahead. So, I mean, I don't want to alarm a lot of people too, because that's going to happen. A lot of people are going to freak out.
Yeah.
But we're not going up as high as what I've seen recently from our neighboring towns around us too, if that's
right.
what it looks like.
Right. And I apologize. A lot of these things different cities do it differently, a 5/8 inch for a
Right.
meter and a different thing. And they're talking 100 cubic feet as opposed to gallons. And it's just,
You can't,
It's-
that's what I've always, it's not apples.
it's not apples for apples, but
Ann or Corey?
So the,
Oh, no one's gonna like me now. I mean, I've never seen as astronomical water bills as here in Port Orford. I lived in Eugene for years, and I mean, I think our highest bill was $80.
Yeah,
Oh.
so ours is water and sewer.
Well, so is Eugene, but
Okay.
I guess my question, and just to, people are struggling out there. People had issues our last water increase. I hear businesses that are having problems and worried about how they're going to pay their water.
Yep.
We don't want our businesses to shut down. So, one of these expenditures is Coast Guard Hill. And when I drive up Coast Guard Hill, there's a lot of new building up there. You got to pay to pump your water up. Is there a way to increase the water connection for folks that are building these new $1 million homes to help offset this $200,000 bill that we've got to pay for Coast Guard Hill, the pump system? I mean,
Water districts do that. Like water districts, like Nasika just went to charging by elevation under those
Yeah.
guidelines.
I mean, if you're going to build on top of a hill and expect the water to be pumped up, when you're deciding to build that McMansion, then you're going to have to add some money to the infrastructure of this town's water. I mean, there has to be a difference, not the mom who's got 2 single kids that can barely afford gas to go to Brookings once a month to get cheap groceries. I don't feel that that person should pay this $200,000 bill. And I don't know what the planning department's fees are. Someone was saying $98 for a building structure. There has to be some, sorry.
well,
This is how
I hear you.
feel.
I agree
feel
with
really
you
strongly about
100%.
this. I don't think this is fair. We know that the economic circumstances of most people in this town are below. I mean, I see the food bank line every morning. God, it's 7:00 in the morning where I live. People are already standing in line. We can't give someone else $13.52 to me probably doesn't mean much, but to someone else it might mean the difference of having a couple dinners for the month. I don't like this.
I agree with it. You have a valid argument. I think anyone who lives in an elevation that has to use a pump station they bring on additional cost, just electricity to run the pumps, cost of the pump station. So the finance committee definitely can look at putting on a charge for pump stations, which should, I think basically is what you're saying.
That would include Dee and Jefferson
Yeah.
and,
Coast Guard Hill.
Hmm.
Coast Guard Hill.
right, in
Yeah.
particular. Yeah, but the others
Yeah, there's two. I
as
mean,
well.
Well, Dee I mean, are we even providing more than 25 PSI on DD? Did we get that fixed? Remember?
Yeah, they fixed the check valve. It's better now, but it's
Okay.
still, when we get low,
That's
it
the first thing
doesn't
that
have
goes.
enough water
Yeah.
there to,
Yeah.
and once the pump kicks on, when we're low, it sucks there pretty much.
And that's something we can discuss, yeah, at a later date. But yeah,
There you kind of build in the replacement of the pump station with the rates and
so what are our water SDCs currently, just for water? Is it $10,000? That's the fee you're talking about.
Approximately $10,000 to $11,000.
So if they want to build, they pay $10,000 or $11,000 for their water, but not under the moratorium.
But not right now.
But why are they not paying under the moratorium? Because we passed the ordinance that says that even if they're putting in a well and they get a building permit, there's a little gap for people who had
Right.
wells and permit, but they
Just a
should
gap.
be saying,
Yep.
they should be paying.
Yeah, well, that's what our ordinance says.
Yes.
But we aren't
So how
building,
come-
but because we aren't, if they're not able to build, they aren't, if they plan to not get a well, they're not paying their SDC fees on that because they aren't building
But-
yet.
How can they be not building? I mean, I thought we were talking about the people who are building houses should be
Yes.
paying in.
They are.
Oh, so we don't have any, there's no projected here for the, oh, I guess what I was going to ask is, we don't have SDC fees here. We have water connection fees. That's the same thing as SDC fees, but they're zero in this budget.
a water connection fee there is actually the cost of the meter and the time that it takes the public works to put it in.
Okay, so that's a different fee than the SDC fee?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and so how much is that fee?
We'll get to
Where
that
is, so
fund.
where is the SDC fees? Oh, good, because those go into the
They're
capital,
in their own fund.
they're in their capital, does that go in the capital fund as opposed to
They
the
would be
enterprise?
back towards the end. There's,
They're,
page 23 would be the water SDC fund.
Yeah,
Okay,
They have their
got it.
own funds.
Okay, thank you so much.
Just
Sorry
'cause
about
the
that.
FTC money's so protected and you
Yes.
can only spend it.
Okay.
a certain way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah,
And getting back to the rates, I wanted to just say I agree with Corey, but a couple of other things too to throw into the mix. One is, this past year we added to the back of our water bills that there is assistance. There has been assistance available for people who need it to get assistance for water funding, but it like ran out partway through the year.
wow.
But it seems like that would be another angle for us to look at, would be to find out and to advocate for assistance programs for people who need it. The reason that we have such an expensive water system compared to elsewhere is we only have 720 households in our
Right.
community that have to pay for it. So if you live in Eugene, we still have to have the whole water system, all the staff and all the infrastructure to do it, but we only have 720 of us to pay for it. So that means we do have to carry a higher load of it. We can't not. And I totally hear what you're saying, but we have consistently, because we're not charging for it, that's why everything is deteriorating to the point where now we're in such trouble where we have these, leaks that are so bad, or that we're looking at things being more problematic. And then the last thing I wanted to say was, in my conversations with Lehigh about grants and stuff for our water system, he's saying, the last time we did a rate study officially was like about 10 years ago. And I was just looking at that recently. And, David put on this list that the RCAC recommended that 10 years ago, they recommended we had some higher rates, and we're still not at that. It's some of the things they recommended. Lehigh said they're going to try to get a grant for a bunch of cities to do updated water rate studies in 2025, just because you kind of can't go out and get grants if you're not keeping up with your rates. That's like, there's sort of this idea that, oh, we can just go get money for free, but there's always going to be the expectation that we're also, carrying some part of it. So anyway.
And when you do get big pockets of money for utilities, like in Nasika, they got 3 million, but the engineers based their rates off of that, and it was a big jump there, and it was half of Nasika in the water. But it was, it was the loan that dictated it, so they really had to do it. And we're having this conversation, and if we do start getting these fundings, there might be a time when we have to do a pretty ugly jump
Yeah,
regardless, just to meet the debt.
yeah.
And didn't you say, Tim, that also because of the same thing, they didn't do any, so by rule, they can do the CPI increase each year, but the council opted during COVID to not do that increase for those few years, which put us then even further behind. And so now I think that's why it feels horrible to see this huge jump in it. But then it was based on, also, we didn't do that during COVID.
But last year, we already last summer had this increase if you used over X amount times. It was so convoluted. I still don't understand my water bill that I got. So we already had major increases, I thought, last summer.
No.
What-
That
When
was,
we had the rationing or
not
whatever.
on the curtailment, unless you just happen to use, there were some folks that did. If you happen to use more than what you did 12 prior months. But we did just have a CPI increase at budget last year, but that was just a small increase. But we've
Those are
elected to
penalties.
pull those charges as a council. What, almost a year ago, we voted to not do those anymore.
So we're not going to have those
No.
anymore this year. Okay, because I kept getting charged extra.
Yeah.
And I wasn't using 20,000 gallons.
Yeah.
I kept being promised that I could get an irrigation meter that doesn't exist or wasn't available.
Right.
Sorry.
Well, they are available. You have to go to City Hall and you can get one.
They're not available right now, actually, Tim.
I
John
emailed
Isidore
Jessica, called Jessica. They're not
Ended it
available.
during curtailment. I don't really understand why, but
Yeah.
they're not available now.
They have not been available. I have gone, believe me.
Well, I will definitely, there's going to be some talk about that. And quite frankly, if the water doesn't go down the sewer, we can't charge you for it.
Well, you are.
Well,
And you have
well,
been.
you have to hear what Melissa and has to say about how all that's going down before we have to have a separate discussion about it.
Okay. I still don't believe you can charge somebody for putting something down sewer if it's not going down sewer. That's my opinion on it.
Well, that is what we do for like the vast majority of people in
Yeah.
this town.
Well, the ones that don't ask for a meter. Yeah. But if you
There's
had a
also
meter and you reported it properly, you used to be able to get,
Yeah, that's how it's been, but there's been, you just have to, I'm not going to go into.
okay, I'm not in.
Right.
it.
Melissa has asked us to have a discussion about it because there's been some weird stuff going on.
Okay.
So we have to have a discussion about it
Yeah.
before we discuss it now. I think you have to hear some other.
Okay, yeah, no doubt. Okay. Well, so the only comment I can make on this is this is what's going to balance our budget. The only way I can think to lessen this that just comes to my top of my head right now is we talked about in public safety, the half-time person, but that's only going to be $39,000. I don't know how much that would adjust this, but you know,
Not enough.
Well, even though being such a huge rate increase, it only increases the average user $20 a month. And it's right around 70% of the population. So,
and then
Those are the lesser expensive homes.
well, those are,
And that would balance our budget with that 70% at $20 extra in the sense that would help us out enough. to hit our budget.
Right.
For water.
To avoid
That did
furlough
balance.
Days or other.
No,
Layoffs,
that's
furlough
no
days.
furlough.
yeah, no furloughs, no layoffs. But
And
Yeah.
it's just, I keep landing on how well have we done our increases in the last 10 years? And if we had done incremental increases, would this number not be that absurd?
well, I think the 2 years we didn't, and
That's 6% at least right there.
yeah, now that I think about it, I know we didn't do it COVID because almost all cities were not doing water increases during COVID. And we elected not to do it as well because people weren't working. We were really concerned that we didn't even know how people were going to pay their bills. Then the following year, we didn't do it. But then I'm almost thinking a city administrator might have missed the boat on the third year. So it might be 3 years.
So even just outside the conversation we're having right now, like to me, we should be pretty damn close to here right now, just on the like ballpark math of those percentages. Say conservatively, it's 9%. There you go.
Well, and if you factor in the cost of goods have gone up so much.
Right, that's the other side of it.
It's, that definitely would do it. There's.
Well,
So
we know
regardless of this
electricity's
conversation
going
of
up.
avoiding this or that, it's bad business to not have an increase and have the 20% increase on the other side.
Not when you have a system
What's
that
terrible,
is ours.
Well, I mean, yeah, but just period, you gotta go with inflation.
it's terrible business because when we started, we were how many thousand short on the 200, 300?
On the public
600,000
safety,
in
228,000.
200 what?
600 in water.
Well, that's not all because we didn't raise rates.
And I just mean that from the math
Engineering
perspective, not that I
costs.
wanna raise rates or do anything.
We didn't
Well, we-
account for.
We know that
Right.
we're going to have
That's not-
electricity rates go up 5% basically. And so that's a big chunk of the water rates, like what Corey's saying.
So the engineering costs,
I know.
we were going for the $70 million grant. We needed shovel-ready projects. The good news is we now have some shovel-ready projects, but the bad news is it put a huge deficit in our water,
Right.
and it's a direct charge to water. There's no way to fix it.
There was no way for us to even try for that money if we didn't.
Correct,
Spend that.
Correct.
correct.
And now moving forward, we can go for smaller chunks of that money.
We have reduced,
Which we are.
we,
That's what I'm trying to say. It was a cost of doing business as a city to try to get more money.
Right. And that ask has been revised down to a functional shovel-ready project thing that's in the queue right now. So we still, like, it's not like we pulled the plug on it, it just got revised and shrank down once we realized that the money.
Did we get any grant money?
Not yet.
Not
No,
that-
that's what I mean, it's in the queue. I think we won't know for another 5 or 6 months, but it
new
was
grant.
revised down to,
The new grant.
The
Yeah,
old grant,
The new grant.
the old grant, we did not,
Yeah.
our application was not up to par, is what we were told. So the agencies rate you,
Right, right.
and who knows, I mean,
Yeah.
Ann knows probably better than most, and I've been doing this for 15 years, but they rate you. And
It was inadequate and we over asked, we screwed up in numerous ways, but then we did another one that's, I think, much better now.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
And that is just a drop in the bucket of what we need. 70 million, if we would have got those two grants, because we were told to split them, if we would have got 70 million, it wouldn't have fixed all of our water supply. So that's how expensive this crazy thing is that most every council prior to us has been working to do something. It's just astronomical. Years ago, just for some history, years ago, you used to get 75% grants and 25% loan, which the city would be responsible for. It's flip-flopped. Now it's 75% loan and 25% grant if you're one of the lucky recipients. And when I say that, almost every city in the United States fights for this money. So, and some of those cities have enough revenue that they can throw grant writers and people at. We don't.
Well, and then the other thing I brought up in that my last water liaison report is that we have to have some money in here for match.
Right.
And that's, Pat, we promised like $30,000 in somewhere for that match for the raw water tank. That will be like next year. We can probably scrounge and scrape and try to go find private funding for it. But we gotta, we have to have some, that's another thing we have to budget for and have. So in the future, when it's time for us to
I agree.
get grants,
Yeah.
we have at least something to
lose
put
the
on the
grant.
table. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there might be resources
Well-
we can go and scrounge, but
Or we could take a loan out if it's that close.
I was just
Yeah.
wondering, can the city get a $500,000 line of credit for this year just to put on a line item and like, once we implement this stuff, we won't need it, but it'll be there. But then something bad will happen and we'll need it. So.
We talked about loans in the finance committee.
Okay, I'm sure, yeah, somewhere along the line.
It wouldn't be a real good thing for us to do at this point.
Yeah, I guess, yeah, because, yeah, it's just like me going out and getting a loan because I don't have money.
Just gonna add.
well, so the idea that, Corey has presented this idea of, trying to put the screws on the people who have electricity, higher electricity for pumping rates. Do we have any idea how many people that is? Is that like
I think it's probably not enough.
30 people, 50 people? I mean, how many households is that?
It's something for the finance committee to write down because it is a revenue source, but we couldn't hope to implement anything, I don't
Yeah.
think, by the time we need to. Even if, just even the crunching the numbers of who lives there, what, the generation, but.
The good news is the new pump is supposed to be better. It's not, when I looked at that pump last time a year ago, there were leaks coming out every end of it. And I couldn't even believe it. And yeah, I had to watch my feet where I was standing because they were shooting little streams out all over. And it's supposed to be built in a way that we don't have to run it 24/7 on electricity. So
A clean way to do the whole thing might just be say the SDC fee is more for places on supplementary pumps or booster stations.
that's something
Yeah.
to look at, definitely.
Cleanest way to probably make it, if you live in this
Right.
area of.
Look at you coming up with that.
So what would that be, Keith Street, Coast Guard Hill?
I'm not good at
One of
executing
the places
things.
that-
That's it. Those are the big places.
Jefferson,
Yeah.
Jefferson.
Mhm.
And Didi on both ends.
Okay.
So can I ask David one question? You mentioned that line 24 in the revenue side was a
Yes.
one-time thing, this transfer or the charge to sewer fund or now wasn't that going to be just asking the wastewater treatment plant to pay for its water from here on?
There was, during the year, the wastewater plant used 6.5 million gallons more than normal.
Oh, right. Okay.
And that's why you see the $100,000 charge. And this is
108.
really kind of the idea why the city should start charging again so that these things come to the attention of someone
Okay.
when they start using a lot of water.
So that was based on water use 1 month
Yeah.
this past year that they're
Okay.
paying for out of this.
Okay. But this, even though we're budgeting it for next year, you're basing it on that it happened last year. This 108, but you don't think this will be a long-term, it will be a budget item long-term, but it won't be that much money.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
They only probably use 1 million gallons in a whole year.
Yeah.
Compared to what they did.
Okay.
at one time.
Thank
We
you.
hope that never happens again because that created a bunch of fun.
Yeah, created issues.
Okay.
All right, so there's that. On page 13, line 56 for engineering. After reducing engineering fees from 100,000 to 25,000, the shortfall was reduced to $110,000. This is again still in the water enterprise. On page 14, line 76, says reimbursements, refunds. $39,800 was added into the budget for repayment of the curtailment fees that were found to be inconsistent with the policy and will increase the shortfall. So you had mentioned, Corey, that there was this weird charge and this curtailment and whatever else. We've now, since looking at that, realized that that convoluted situation was not accurate once it went through our 2022 forensic audit and found out some of these things of how this went. And so we need to be able to pay back our customers for that. So we have built in this nearly $40,000 for the people that got charged in it inaccurately for that curtailment situation. So we've budgeted that money on line 76.
And hopefully that doesn't happen again.
And hopefully that doesn't happen again. And so overall, it was suggested that an additional rate increase be incorporated, doubling the rate increase for just water services, not the designated for reserves, would bring in an additional $76,930, which would only reduce the shortfall to $56,000. And then this is where these rate increases happen. So as he looked at, the CPI and what was the normal rate increase, then he doubled it to say, does this make more sense? It was still too short. And so it's basically tripled the the rate increases, which he explained earlier. And with this situation also, as we had mentioned earlier, if you look at on page 15 for the water reserve, basically all our water reserve has come down because we've moved everything out of our water reserve fund into basically into our water enterprise fund. So that cushion, that the shock absorbers for that is drawn down.
And that's,
Just so you see where that came from.
and that's the really hard part, is we've taken our reserves down, but that's, there again, that is how we got to where we are with a balanced budget. That's what it's taken with those water rate increases. And anyway, we bounced back and forth as a finance committee. We had highs, we had lows, we had lows, we had lows.
We had lowers.
And then we ran out of time and we came here and, you know,
Because we had those same conversations, Corey, believe me. I mean,
bet.
it's just such a dismal situation.
I guess the one thing that, you know, I wish we had like communication to folks and transparency. And I'm not saying that there hasn't been transparency. I think everybody is so busy. You just started your job. You guys are all volunteers. I mean, it's remarkable what this group does. It would be really nice to maybe post at the post office, put on Facebook networks, you know, every avenue that we can. Look, we're not going to have the overage fees this summer. We made some mistakes in calculating. Those who were paying over are going to get money back. We're not sure when, but you're going to get your money back. We apologize. And now, you know, we're going to raise it $13.52 to just, because if you see this $13.52 and I'm thinking, oh my God, that, and then on top of it, we're going to have these curtailment fees because I didn't know they were going away. That would help swallow this pill, I think.
Right. Well, and we haven't done all that because it has to go through this committee first.
none of
And,
this
we
is
can't,
really
this
a
is not,
report.
until this committee decides our plan and that this is what we're doing, we can't go out and say that yet. But no, that's exactly the plan. And that's with trying to do this is to be able to articulate it and to have town halls or to have some Facebook and to put it out and to say this is what's happening so that people do understand. But it has to start here so that we can make the decisions that we are, and then we can
And not to
be
sound defensive,
transparent.
but we did upgrade our website and just okayed the Facebook page for those exact reasons.
And yeah, we have been trying to write
we,
articles.
And if I wanted to be a
papers and
snarky
stuff.
mayor, I'd be like, well, we do post for the meetings every month and people do have the opportunity to come in. I'm not being, I am being snarky because I always say that though. It's like, well, gosh, we post for the meetings and because of social media, I think people have gotten away from the public meetings as much.
You're allowed to be online.
No, that's what I mean. Like there is avenues, but I can never, some things you can just never say like and make it sound nicely, you know, and I don't mean it like that.
I read an article this morning, or read her something today about how, you know, communities that have effective newspapers that like really transmit information do much better than those who don't. And,
yes,
you know, we don't,
yes.
we have one, but we don't have that kind of in-depth coverage. So
One of our
we
biggest
suffer.
problems, Corey, just to somewhat put you at ease, is we went through a complete staff changeover.
I know.
And Pat inherited that. And we all talked about it. We didn't think it could be as brutal of an animal as it's been. I mean, we all, for almost 3.5 years, have barely been able to keep our heads afloat. That's how we go from one problem to the next. We go from a city administrator to, you know, it's been super difficult. And we haven't had a finance director for a couple years. Is a huge part of our problem. And that's why, even though we're in this condition, you still see that $85,000 there because we need that person in the greatest way.
Because
We
it would
need-
save money otherwise. that
Yeah,
that we've
it cost us
wasted.
way more money by not having one.
No continuity, bad reporting, not
Yeah.
able to stay ahead of it.
No
you know?
reports, no
That's the key,
reports.
that's the one right
I mean,
there was the.
We've had counselors in the past that question every line item, like 30 minutes into the meeting, line item 17, why did it cost, who is Zipley? Why did it cost that, And we always encourage counselors to do that because it's really good, but some of those questions can be answered in the office in between meetings and stuff like that. But it's been a tough 3.5 years. There's no doubt in my mind. I've been involved with the city for 15 years and it's by far been my toughest
It's a great diet plan though.
run. Yeah.
Or a sleep deprivation plan.
Yeah. Okay.
So I like your ideas, and yes, that will be the plan.
So 39,800 was a reimbursement refund.
Yes.
Even with the increase in rates, we were able to keep some of the capital improvements in the budget. The Coast Guard Hill
Mhm.
pump station on page 14, line 85, actually increased the cost of that pump station replacement to 200,000. And also on line 89, there some culvert work on Hubbard Creek that's being funded with a grant for 25,000.
So that's a little bit strange, that counting. I was wondering what that's for. Is that the culvert repair work, culvert planning?
That's what I understood John to say was a
Okay.
culvert.
I
being
I
replaced.
sent you a budget. I don't know if you got, I sent an email to you and Melissa and Dina. It's had the real specific numbers for how much money. It's going to be 100,000 that's coming in for that culvert planning.
Is that the culvert that John was talking about?
I assume
I
so,
assume so.
but I don't know why it's under, since he's saying Hubbard Creek impoundment, I wonder if he was talking about dredging money or something.
Oh, dredging's in repair and maintenance of pump stations.
Okay.
We got 50,000 in there.
Yeah,
I'm just
I don't
going
know
off of
which one
what
this is.
we were told.
Because what you're saying is it would be a capital, it would be money, it'd be a revenue stream,
Well,
not,
it's going to be a $100,000 in, and then it could be a $100,000 out. I mean, we're still figuring out the final budget, but I don't understand where the 25 came from because it's more like 100,000 in and 100,000 out. But did you
We're
guys not get that email that I
100,000.
sent you, or?
was that today?
No, I sent it last week before the budget meeting. I sent the budget information for all the watershed grants for the next year.
I don't remember.
Doesn't ring
Did you
bell?
get it? I don't remember
First
seeing
of
it.
all, where's the 100,000?
It's-
Where's it coming in from? Why
It's
haven't-
about, we still haven't gotten it yet because we have to take there's a few more steps, but probably in July it will come in the form of an state revolving fund 100% forgivable loan. So we have to jump through a few more hoops, and then that money is going to be in a fund for us to use that's going to be reimbursable. So there'll be some engineering fees, there'll be a few things, and that will get billed to them. So
I
that's
think
what,
we did have that discussion, and I think John and I had remembered, that was a grant. And you said, I think you said something about that if we're anticipating getting it, that,
we don't put it in
You
yet.
can't go in?
But everything
You know, if you're
stated, isn't it?
We know we're going to get it. I mean, we just,
anticipating, you know you're going to get it, yes.
okay, well, I
You
didn't.
can do a supplemental budget for when you do get it.
Well, at this point, what is the best thing to do?
Wait until you get it, I would say, because you're in this position because you spent money anticipating getting a grant.
Right.
And now you're jacking up the rates to cover that cost.
well, but this
So
is
that
money going
grant comes in.
and out. There's no real difference to the budget at all because
But
it's
it's still
money.
going to have to be accounted for.
Yes, but I'm saying it doesn't really
So it's
affect the budget at all because it's like money for a specific thing and it's gonna, the money's going to come in for that specific thing and it's going to go out for that specific thing.
Okay.
It doesn't
Except,
It's gonna
affect the
wash.
financial performance, but it does affect the document that we're trying
Yes.
to get done. So the cleanest way, because we're so far in, I think Dave
Okay.
is saying, is the supplemental budget is just a resolution or one document
Okay.
that doesn't have to be done until the very end of the year. So if we do need to get the 30,000 from somewhere else for the tank or any other things, we can just wait till closer to the end of the year and do that supplemental budget and
Okay.
be done with it.
so does that mean we're not going to be able to like start spending money in July or August on that project? If we wanted to, because that's what
Well, I
the
guess we could do
proposal
the
is.
supplemental budget then as soon as we receive it and start spending the money.
Yeah, once you receive it, you can take.
So would that be like unanticipated revenues, basically, that we would, once we get it?
No, once we get it, yeah.
One of the
to
problems
do a
that you
resolution?
see with this is that if you'll budget for it, anticipating getting it, and you don't get it, it's in your budget and you
For
spend
3
it.
years, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So if we wait until we get it, and then you can come and have to the council and say, this was an unanticipated revenue, so that they know about it. Once you get it, then you could let people know about it, and then it could just go wash right back out.
But
it has to be accounted for.
the problem is it's in here wrong now because it's the wrong amount of money.
With the 25,000, what if the 25,000 is something else for the Hubbard impoundment?
Yeah, could be.
Because he got this number from John, I think.
That's why I got confused, is because it could be for the pump house rebuild or something like that he was talking about.
Well, was there a
But
roof?
regardless, I hear your concern, Ann, but it won't stop us from spending money this year if we do get it. Once we get it, we could do the supplemental budget. It's like a
Okay.
meeting action
Okay.
thing. I mean, it is a little bit more work, but I don't think it's more
Yeah.
work than getting those real numbers to put into the budget right now.
Right. Okay. I'm just concerned because I did.
No, I could see
I
your
s-
concern, and that's
I
why I'm like, no, we
I
can
sent
still
this
spend-
memo with all the information for the budget for this
Right.
year for all of these grants that I've been working on. So all the real numbers would be in, and somehow it didn't get through apparently.
Gotcha.
So do we actually have this $25,000 already? This impound grant is somewhere sitting in a bank account that we have.
We don't know that it's a
I don't
grant.
know what it is.
So how can we vote on this if we don't even know what it is or where it is?
Well, we budgeted for it, so that's good. We,
And
Then
there
why
is-
can't we budget for the $100,000 that's coming in if we're not sure this $25,000 is in that we're already budgeting for? I'm confused.
well,
It's not a grant. The Hubbard Creek impoundment isn't a grant.
But
It's
then why
just
does it
money that-
say
It
Hubbard
says
Creek Impoundment Grant?
Grant.
Why
Oh,
does
I'm
it
looking
use
at
that language?
89.
I'm looking at line item
12.
89.
Page 12,
Page
line
14.
Oh, I was looking at page
Okay.
14, line 89.
so back to page 12.
line 4, it
Line
says
4.
$25,000.
It's
And then
revenue.
81, it says watershed grant. On line 1, on 81, it says watershed grant. There's nothing. And then
That
it
was
says
50,000 grant? Or,
maybe.
no, 'cause that would have been.
Oh, no, that's the.
Impact.
So the Hubbard, so we're on page 12, line item 4, David. Hubbard Creek Impoundment Grant.
And that's what I understood John to say, that the money was from.
Mhm.
Okay.
So it's in and out, it's the same story. You got 25, if it is a
Right.
grant that's not going to come in, then your budget's overinflated by 25,000.
That $25,000 number is.
Well, and then you look on page
Maybe
14
we're
at
I'm assuming
81.
that that was the match
Get the
for
grant,
that, because there is no
same-
match.
I'm
Same story,
confused.
Get the grant, put it
Because
back.
then you have also on page 14, you then have on line 81, Hubbard's Creek Watershed Grant with $0 in it.
And that actually is another thing that I sent you in the memo is that we actually got $25,000 that we have there to spend over the next 5 years, like $5,000 a year. So
Maybe that's the
$25,000.
$25,000
That's probably that Hubbard Creek Impoundment Grant.
is the $25,000.
so maybe that is, but that's not to be spent all this year. But anyway,
So
it's
But it still has to be budgeted. I mean, we had to put it in the budget.
yes, but we're only going to be, we have $25,000 or so left that we can use, but we have to like
Dole it out over 5
bill
years.
for it. We have to invoice for it. So we're only going to probably spend like 5 to 10,000 of it this year.
So if we over budget, we're way
Okay.
better off than
Yep.
under budgeting.
Yep.
Well, and you got to match up with your bank statements too. So even like we have to administratively know we can only spend 5,000 and keep track of that, but it's going to go from 25,000 this year to 20,000 next year to 15,000 the next year. So you could track it those 3 years.
Okay.
Because that's
It can
another thing
roll.
that's really hard
It
with
can
this.
roll.
Like this document is a snapshot of July 1st, how we think this next year is going to perform. And it's human nature to try to get everything in here, but it's kind of impossible. So we're just trying to get that best snapshot. And
Okay.
and
Well, I'm
that's
just
why
saying
you
I
have
did my best
percentages
to
that you
try
can
to.
go over or under and
You did. And I think probably if it was, I don't remember seeing it. I don't doubt that you sent it. It's probably just one of those things that
8
sort of
million,
washed through.
Right.
But we've been working on this for 3 weeks now. And so I think that was the
You
hard
said
piece.
you said your email wasn't even accepting.
Well, yeah,
it
and
was
last
Dave-
week it could have
David
been,
or someone.
yeah, because I did have, yeah, last week when my whole email went out and it was out for 2 days that I didn't realize. And then even when it comes back online, they don't pop back in.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So I mean,
I have no problem. We can take this 25,000 out of both places. Because it's a grant and it's one of those that
It
you
just
can
seems
do
like we should
supplemental
be able to
budget,
ask
but
John what he's
see it.
talking about. Because if John has some other thing that we don't know,
right.
you know, I mean, I don't understand what.
Well, then
Well,
the
but
best thing,
the 5 or the 25,000 is makes me think that very could
That's what he's talking about.
possibly be it,
But-
that money, but
But
it's
would he
just
be
not
talking about it
100%, so
for
we
the
can't vote on it. at this point.
impound?
Yeah, I mean,
Kinda
shouldn't
weird.
we know? I mean, is John the former city administrator who?
no,
No, John had a public works.
John Isidore.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was
Yeah.
John. Oh, okay.
yeah.
Blood
No,
pressure just went
No,
down.
and in our defense, there was like the watershed grant for the property, and now we have
Got
some for some riparian work,
Okay.
and it is.
Okay, I thought we were listening to the former.
So the,
No,
No, head of public works on
so
this
we
one.
can do one of two things. We can leave the 25,000 or we can pull it out and do a supplemental budget for it when we find out.
Why don't we, couldn't we also just sort of acknowledge that we know all this and then like tomorrow I can call up John and or go down there and say, John, what's and ask him about it and try to bring it back to the next, try to straighten it out? Or do you just guys don't think we should try to straighten it out?
I think we need to
I
try.
would rather take it out than
Yeah.
prolong this. I think,
I-
we're
I agree.
getting close to take a vote on this, I think.
Yeah. I'd say you take it out and you add it back in with a supplemental budget. And that would be the same time we add your 100,000 in as a supplemental budget
And
when we know we get it. I'm sorry,
No,
Pat.
I can't interrupt you, but the nice thing about these supplemental budgets is they're both budget neutral. It's not, we're
Right.
not adjusting the budget document or the numbers. We're just waiting till we know we have the money, doing the short paperwork to put it on the budget document once we have the birds in hand.
Can
Money
I
in, money out.
ask a procedural question? Because I don't know all this. Could we just put a pin in this fund, put a pin in water right now and just table this one fund until we can ask what this thing is and then come
We
back to it?
could do that, or we could just remove it, adopt the fund and
Then
add it
when
back in as a
we find-
supplemental budget. We do supplemental budgets every single year.
Okay, okay.
Is there any possibility that the grant money that's coming in, is there any chance that it could reduce the proposed increase? Or no,
No.
because it's just coming in and going out?
Because of the budget neutral. Yeah, you got to put it on the expense side as soon as you put it on the revenue side, so it's a zero.
Yeah, you have to spend that money. It's not that we get to keep, we couldn't like say, oh, we're going to spend 80,000 on what the state gave it to us for and then use 20,000 to paint the restrooms, just for an example. We
It's all got to go to the culvert.
all got to go there.
So it's not going to any of the expenses we have?
It's
No,
going
it's-
to prevent future
Yeah.
disasters, basically.
Yeah, and that culvert would be an expense that we would have pretty soon, I think.
It's like
And if we
bending
didn't,
and
it would,
breaking.
yeah.
I will go replace it for 5,000, but
You and your pickaxe out there.
No, I have a backup.
Oh, okay, back.
Well, the city has
So are there any other questions on the Water Enterprise Fund?
I don't feel like Corey and Ann are convinced about the supplemental budgets. Like, because it's budget neutral, we wouldn't be changing the document that we have. And how do you account for money that you're not sure that you have yet?
Yeah,
I
but
guess.
wouldn't it make people of Port Orford happy to know that we actually are getting more grant money in, especially after all the talk about the grants, that then we didn't get the grants? And I just for transparency and.
And also for like,
But I'm not sure that this is the document that people are going to take the time to educate themselves to learn that this line item reflects the grant. I mean, I'm not saying that I 150% agree with you that we need to get that out as soon and as
But-
widely as possible, but
But isn't this audited? Isn't this what shows this money came in and this is what we're using it for and it can't be used for anything else? If
this
it's
isn't
not
the
on
actual
budget-
audit document, but I guess the real numbers on there are, so yeah.
Right.
but, and this is the document that's on the website. So like,
Yeah.
for example, if anybody ever goes onto the website and says, oh, what is the budget this year? That's where people go. I mean, I go there sometimes when I'm trying to remember what happened. So when you adopt a supplemental budget, you don't go back and ever add it in. It's like, right?
Well, that's our bad.
But you do when you do your next budget cycle. But it's still like, I mean, and because of that, like, yes, it will get reported on these documents, but we kind of want to get that information out as soon as we get that, you know? But I'm not trying to upset anyone. I think differently on how this document's going to get assimilated by the public. And I don't know, it is transparency, but it's transparency that you would really have to dig for.
That's the point of transparency though, to dig.
It's not unusual to adopt a budget in our June meeting and then in our July or August meeting, have a supplemental budget. Because we do the very best we can to budget for this cycle, but there's always something that happens that changes that I can't remember a year we didn't have a supplemental budget.
We've done at least 2 of the 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the very first year we did.
So we're really not doing anything. It's money in, money out.
But I mean, so as far as the transparency goes, is it transparent to budget for things that you don't have yet?
Well,
I mean, that is kind of the whole
Budgeting.
budget document in itself, I guess, is budgeting for things you don't have yet. but-
citations we don't have.
Right, no, I know,
I
I've
mean,
answered
we're doing
myself.
that. I mean, I look at things from a legal perspective, okay? I look at every single document to prove a case at trial. If you're not transparent on this and someone somewhere says, oh my God, city council, they're scamming with God knows another $100,000, like what happened 10 years ago in some, mind of somebody. If it's here and it's transparent, no one can ever go back and say, we didn't show you. That's all. That's the way I'm looking at it.
And I'm looking at it like, I feel like we are showing them. We're showing them 25,000 in the Hubbard Creek Impoundment Grant on page 12, 25,000 as revenue. And then we're showing it somewhere else spending it, if I'm not mistaken.
On 14.
Yeah, on page 14, line
14.
Yeah,
line
but
89.
but we just don't know what that is or if
Or
it's
actually
right
line
or if
8,
it's wrong.
yeah.
So it just seems like you could just make anything up and say, oh, we're going to put in 25,000 for rubber ducks on this line and we're going to put in,
Uh-huh.
another one for rubber ducks, the other line. So I see what you guys are saying. And if you really feel like we need to not put a pin in it and get it right and then just fix it in July, I could go with that, but I'd really like to have then an end document that shows what the actual adopted budget was, as opposed to then always having a budget that doesn't really reflect what we,
Well, we
are doing.
definitely are going to have a budget that we are going to adopt.
Yeah.
At some point.
yeah, that won't, what we are saying is we'll adopt a budget that won't have it like these things in it. And so
No,
then
it's
we'll
there.
have,
It's right here in front of us. It's on page
But the
12 and page
supplemental
14.
but the supplemental will be some other
Oh.
thing that won't be in there. And so then it will never
And
be in
Ann's
there.
already done all this work and has sent an email that I don't know why this can't be tabled and have that stuff added. I guess that's,
Okay.
Those are numbers that will happen if we receive the grant, but it's a shoe in, we're gonna get the money.
So you're saying you want to put the $100,000 in then?
Well, I'm just saying, to me, it makes sense to get it right. I mean, that we're all here working on this, and you guys have been working on it for weeks to get it right.
Yeah.
And I can see what you're saying is it doesn't matter because it's budget neutral, but anyway,
Well,
so
it does
I don't
matter.
mean to,
It does matter, but it doesn't matter as much because it's money in and money out.
Yeah.
It's not changing the bottom line of this budget at
Yeah.
all.
Right.
Period.
Yeah.
So you can probably call John.
That's what I'm gonna do tomorrow. He doesn't work today. He did not work today. I will call him tomorrow. And I guess my only question is, as I look at this now, if I'm on page 12, I look at line item 3, Hubbard's Creek Watershed Grant, 0. Line 4, Hubbard Creek Impound Grant, 25,000. Then I go to page 14 and it says 81, Hubbard's Creek Watershed Grant, 0, which I think was the same one perhaps. And then, then it says Hubbard Creek Impoundment and the $25,000. So are those two revenues and two expenditures, and which ones are the same? Like, they aren't named the same. So
I'm
I
going to
can
let
understand,
David answer that question because I can't answer that.
like, I don't know. So I see what,
well, they're both, the impoundment one both has 25 and the watershed both has 0, right?
okay.
For next year proposed. Yeah. So it's just, we don't know what it is, or, maybe John was just pulling something out of his head because he thought, oh, we got to shove something in there for the watershed. Something's going on. But anyway,
And maybe that was the $5,000 over 5 years, each of the next 5 years that he knew, but didn't have the other monies that you were speaking of. So if you could please resend me that, that way I will for sure see it again, and then I can ask him.
And we're sure we're going to get the 100 grand. See, that's where
Yeah.
I'm hung up. If we're 100% positive we're going to get it, I can see it being in there. But if we're not, adding it as a supplemental budget doesn't seem like.
That is more transparent than putting it in here, like
That's
counting
kind of,
chicken
that's the
before
way I
they-
look at
yeah.
it. That's the way I look at it. And I just look at it differently.
No, I'm 100% the same. If it's 100% we can get it, then yeah, but I just.
Yeah. And I don't know how we know we're going to get it 100%. What if the state decides they can't afford to do it next week or something? I don't really know, but that's the way I think.
if you don't want to do it, I mean, I've just been, I've been corresponding with these people for like weeks and with all these exhibits and doing all sorts of things. And they've been telling me we're going to get it. There's no chance we're not going to get it. There's a delay in that it being published. But we can leave that one out if you want to.
Now, where does the supplemental budget reside? It
Bless
doesn't,
you.
it doesn't get added to the budget anywhere. It's a separate item in the minutes, or?
No, it's a change in the budget, correct? And it goes in the budget.
It's changing the budget, and your budget will reflect that from that point on.
On the website, Joseph would be changing it.
He wouldn't change
That
this document, no.
Does not change, but
Well, now we know there's 100,000.
The supplemental document can be added underneath the budget, showing the supplemental budget, but it wouldn't change that budget document we accepted on this day. It would be, this is the budget accepted on this day. This is the supplemental budget that was added, that we did for these reasons on that day. I thought there might even be a resolution in there too with the supplemental budget.
And
So
then
it
next
would
year
be-
and then next year it will be in these
It would show
budget
up
items
Right.
on this year's,
in that year's budget.
And,
correct.
and it's not quite the same, Ann, as far as the funding mechanism, but when the port got the money for the cranes, we got an acceptance letter from Business Oregon and it was 100%. 3 months later, they looked at our performa, they pulled the money back. So I am a little gun shy about it just on general principle, even though it's not the same type of money, things,
Yep.
Murphy's Law type
Yep.
of thing.
Okay. Just so we see, here's like what it looks like on the website. It's kind of in a weird spot anyway. It's on the city council page. It just says adopted budget. And that was last year's adopted budget. There's nothing in here about any supplemental changes that we made. So unless everybody has a good memory and remembers what we actually did, You know, that's, I guess, the thing. I mean, I come back and try to look at this if I'm looking things up, or I save this. So, but I understand what you guys are saying. If you don't want to do
I
it,
would
I'm
think
okay.
though that a supplemental budget would be more out into the open for the public, because you would put on the website, we're doing supplemental budget. You could say, we got a grant to do this, so we're doing a supplemental budget. It could actually be used to make it more
A more
visual.
positive case,
Yeah, it
because
takes
it's
a
all just
motion,
mixed
a
into
second,
this.
and a vote of all city councilors. It's totally transparent. It's in our city council meeting.
No, I get that. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, like, then, you know, if anybody goes to look at the budget, it's not there.
We've
But
had,
now we know, so we can just do better on our website too.
yeah,
And
that's,
obviously, we're invested in it now, so we're gonna have people that say, hey, the dang supplemental budget's not on the website, you need to get it on there.
yeah, and that, now that we have somebody in place that can direct that, that is the problem. We haven't had
Okay.
somebody running the ship for two city administrators, I think, and that's the problem. And I agree, that's a huge problem. But we are getting better about getting stuff on our website. I mean, there was time stuff wouldn't even get on the website. It was horrible. It was way worse than it is now.
And we just got a bulletin board for Rays
Oh,
Oh,
that'll
good.
go up,
Good.
and it'll have different notifications and
I think the most important place is for it to land on our website.
Mhm.
And that's just something, we walk out of that council meeting with an adopted document. Melissa gives it to Joseph, says this got to go on our website, and it should. I know we haven't been that good. I absolutely agree 100%.
So my last question on this, and this probably is for Anne. So you know how when you do your credit and you've got these loans and you've got this stuff and it helps you get better credit, do the more grants that we have on our annual budget help us get more grants?
I don't think so. In fact, well, you know, one of the things that actually impedes us is something like we have bonds that we're paying off, so we can't have too many of those. That's part of what's in our sewer budget. And because every grant requires a match, that's where, like, the more we have, it's actually kind of harder. So we've talked a little bit about, like, we need to start being maybe more strategic. We have been strategic in some ways because we've had other funding to help us get some grants, or there's been pots of money that have, there's been some ways it's strategic, but there's another way to be strategic, which is to kind of try to put things together so that we know we have match, or figure out how to get the match through in kind, such as doing our volunteer time and
Right.
other things. So
And there's a ton of the volunteer time, and we get to go at the rate, whatever the rate is.
but we don't document it well
And it's
enough.
not credit, but perceived credit that you could get is performing well on the grants that you do have.
There
That's
it
what
is.
the funding people are gonna do, and you think it's really hard to get the grants, but once you get the grant, you start have to reporting and meeting those
exactly what I was gonna say.
stipulations, that's when it gets.
They want to back winners. So if they see that you've been successful getting a grant, you've been successful getting a grant, you've not necessarily in these documents, but that you can show these are the grants that we've been successful. So you're strategic and you're targeted and you're focused on ones that you know that you can do. And you do all this front work to have all the engineering and all the demographics and all the stuff that woman is like trying to print money for. When you start getting those, then that's when agencies are like, yes, I'm backing a winner. I know you can handle this. I know you can do it. And then you get more. So they aren't necessarily looking in this document to see that. They're looking at, we've earned this and we've done this one and we've done this and here's what we've done with it.
Thank you.
So
And
yeah,
in
good
short,
question.
Been on the bad kid list for
A
a
little
while.
bit, yeah. So we
We're
need to
trying
get
to
on the
get
big.
better.
We're trying to get out from the
Yeah.
corner.
Got it. Okay.
Excuse me, everybody, I'm gonna have to leave.
Okay.
So just signing
Okay,
off.
thanks so much,
Thank
Perry.
you.
If you're available on Wednesday, we're gonna have another meeting Wednesday at
4:30.
4:30, okay?
Okay, I'm looking. I think I can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry.
Talk to you soon.
Is
I-
it the, wait, is it the 23rd? Oh, nope, there she went.
Yes, the
Yeah.
23rd.
It's Thursday.
That's Thursday, not,
It's Thursday.
not
So
Wednesday.
we have about 20 minutes. we can continue this discussion.
No, 6:30, so we're past due.
Are we past? We're past due, so we can continue this discussion, or we can,
I move to accept the water enterprise fund as accepted. Or as presented.
I'll second
To
that.
accept the water enterprise
Presented.
fund as presented.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Do we have some more discussion on this?
That's why I made the motion, is in case we did. There's some big ones. This is the tough one.
And this is, I have my notes for myself on here. I have a supplemental budget is what I've written, $100,000. So I know that's my note to myself. So I understand that.
And the big discussion point here was the
Mhm,
rate
mhm.
increases that, I mean,
Oh,
the other
right.
thing was,
Mm.
so that's really and there's the question was there is no way to defray that. That's really the big.
And sometimes people can make motions to start discussion, not because they're leaning one way or another, just to throw that out there.
And then, that's, I don't have anything else to say, I guess.
I'll just reiterate on the rate thing. It's a tough sell. It hurts. None of us want to tax the people where it hurts the most, but we have been lacking the last couple of years on our regular increases, and with COVID jumping everything up like it did, like we're losing money regardless of the situation we're in. With the rates that we had, we would be losing money in a way. I know we inflated it a little bit because of the situation we're in, but I think you could do the math and it'd be pretty dang close if we would have been hard-nosed on our increases.
So the fact of the matter is, it goes back 10 years ago, like somebody spoke of earlier. We went to the people and we asked them to support a bond. They didn't support the bond. And the mayor said the next day, or at the next meeting, Mayor Auburn said, it's going to cost us more to do it this way, to piecemeal it. And it's true. I don't know at the time I really believed that, but watching the cost of goods go up the last 2 or 3 years has definitely taught me a huge lesson. I just can't believe how much stuff has gone up.
In the past 12 years since that, or 14 years since the city decided not to do that, it's just everything has continued to deteriorate without repair.
Without a doubt.
repair.
There's no doubt in my mind.
And I think the hard part about this fund in particular, or all of these funds, water and sewer and these, is we have to break even or do a little bit better. Like we can't lose. We have to have some way to break even on these. Correct. And that's really particularly as we've wiped out our entire reserve.
Yeah. So when you
That
say
could
we
have
can't,
shock
we can't,
absorb,
you
we
mean
have
we
nothing,
really
like
can't.
literally we cannot lose money on it. Like we can't be losing money on what we're doing.
No, we can't make money and we can't
We
lose.
can't make it and we can't lose it. And right
We
now
can
we have
grow our
no
budget.
shock absorbers.
We could fend, when I say we can't make money, we can
grow our budget.
we can figure out a way to spend any amount of money in our water and our sewer department. That's how poor condition they're in. It's unfortunate.
And
But-
remember, it's the 20-year game too. Like, we're not going to see the results of these decisions, but maybe in 20 years, Public Works will have what they need to succeed.
Well, I'm hoping in 3 years, this significantly turns it around.
Has to.
So,
And we don't want to put ourselves in the same spot we were before, which is, man, if they would have just done what they needed to do at this time, 6 years from now, they would be even more in arrears.
We've inherited that 12 years plus of
oh yeah,
Correct.
backlog.
every,
Trying to fix, 12 years ago, the council, well, maybe the council.
Well,
Right.
And if we wanted to sweeten it, we could throw out this is a rate increase until 2027 or 2028.
We don't decide.
Just to make it, huh?
We don't decide that this meeting. They were just deciding this topic.
No, not this one. We're just, no.
I think you have to be careful with that though too, because
that's,
If
something,
we accept this budget, we're accepting this proposed increase. I have a question. So we're saying that a lot of this has to do with COVID, but I see one thing that I wrote in my notes. We got COVID money from the government. We got $130,000 one
Correct.
spot, and I thought it was like total 200 and some odd thousand, 260,000 or something altogether. Did none of that money go towards the water budget at that point in time?
Towards the BRIC grant. So in a way it did. I mean, I think that's most of the $300,000 that we were told that we had.
It went towards, a lot of that went towards engineering cost for shovel-ready projects.
And that is to try to fix the leaks that
Yeah.
are costing us just,
Right.
you know.
John was telling me the other day that and Pat probably can remember the number.
John Isidore, not John Heddle.
Yes, the clamps went up from 177 to $389, just the clamp, and they need 2 of those on a leak. Just those, and the pipe. I can't remember what he told me the pipe went up, but he said he hadn't sat down and put a complete number to it, but he says that a leak probably is costing us $5,000 to fix. That's when you factor in insurance, PERS, healthcare, and salaries of our employees, plus the equipment that we're buying.
And then because everything's so leaky, we have to overrun our water treatment or water plant too much. That's like wearing it down. We have
I know.
over killing our
Hoping it's
staff. So they have to work
That's what
overtime
that
and are
was in the budget.
exhausted. And it's just like, it's kind of a, it's a lot of problems that come from not charging or well, not keeping up with
Not keeping up with rate.
rate increases and with repair or, proactive things.
Anyway, not knowing
Doing.
the answers to everything and not being 100% happy myself, if everybody's ready to vote, I'll call for the vote. Greg,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Corey,
No.
Tim, yes. Yeah,
So-
vote was 5-1 and passed to,
Is it possible to, because you're going to have some public meetings with this rate increase.
Mhm.
Is it possible to do the CPI and CCI rate increase first that's allowed by the resolution, and then the difference, do that in your public meetings? Because we will have a regular CPI increase to the wastewater also.
Just so it doesn't look quite so, just so we're not going from 0 to, yeah, so
3%, 7, 9%, or 6%.
or is 2 increase is going to be more confusing than 1? I mean, this is done in a public meeting, so I feel like we're covered there.
But we didn't have a notice of it,
Yeah, but
of that this is the topic.
We have to have a notice for rate increases.
so without this, how would we balance a budget by
this is a
the
public
end
meeting,
of
though,
June?
that was noticed.
Would be my only question, because without a budget, basically they don't open the doors Monday morning in July.
Well, these rate increases won't take effect until your August billing,
Okay,
because your July
July.
usage doesn't get billed until August.
so then what would we do? Okay, yeah, oh, that makes sense, I guess.
So David, can you explain what you just said though? Like why separate out this year's CPI versus the other budget increase? Because it sounds like what Pat's saying is it's kind of like we're doing the past couple of years CPI.
Well, I'm just thinking timing. The faster you can start getting the money coming in, if public outreach is going to take a couple months and slow that part down, maybe we can just get what's authorized by the resolution in the process. Just something to,
So what if we broach the subject for this meeting? Like, it's a big conversation, but we put on the agenda, we need to have, other, like, key in, like, other than our regular increase that's on the books, we need to have a conversation about this much and then come to, like, start the process in June, knowing that we're gonna try to sell it later on, but at least we're kind of, it's not slapping them in the face. They'll know that we're having that conversation before we get the budget done.
Yeah, I guess I don't see,
The June meeting's the last 3 weeks into June.
that's coming up. Yeah.
We still have only a week left after that.
To accept the
Isn't,
budget.
don't,
After the budget.
I thought we adopt the budget at that June meeting,
We,
don't
in a
we?
perfect world, we
Yeah.
do. And in the worst case scenario, we
Right.
adopted at 11:59 on.
God,
30th.
Don't.
Yeah, it can happen.
My fear is we go through that and we don't adopt it, and then we start going backwards on what you worked on to balance our budget.
So you're saying just use the budget committee and adopting the budget as the outreach for the,
No, we would put it in our public, we would publicly notice it for our June meeting and have discussions about it. I think, because I feel like if you say we got to do it by August 1 and we don't get there by August 1, we start going backwards as a city on collections, which means we won't have a balanced budget.
right.
And that is what scares me.
Well, and the reality of this is that if we have a public meeting about raising the water rates, everybody's going to come and say, we don't want to raise the water rates.
Yeah.
And we're still going to be in this position of, as you said,
That's-
if we don't do anything, we're going to close, city's going to close on July 1st.
That's
And
kind of
so,
what I'm concerned about.
so, you know, do we invest our efforts into the public communication about why we have to do this? I mean, I don't know what is the best, if we have to do a process where we have a public meeting to explain this, if we, you know, if we're like asking people, what do you think? I mean, we know everybody's going to say, we don't like it. That's what we've heard for the past 15, 20 years. And that's
Like
why
any
we're
of
in
us
our
like it.
hole. Yeah.
Everybody
None
wants
of
the
us
other
like
guy to pay it is the problem, and that's
Well, I mean, but yeah.
turns into this, everybody pointing at everybody.
Yeah. But we kind of know that we've been through this ringer of that we don't have the money and that we're digging out of holes and we're deep, and not everybody gets that yet, but
But we're doing what balances our budget.
And that's the thing, is the answer going to change if we know 50 people to 100 people are going to come in here and say, you can't do that. Is that going to make us not do the rate increase that we just voted on?
Our budget would be,
That's what I mean.
that's what,
We knew that when we were deliberating this in our heads, but we also have to be as transparent as possible, which kind of is get the news out as soon as you know. But
And about like the $39,400 or whatever it is that was overcharged.
Mhm.
We have to wait until this happens to tell folks that, oops, we made a mistake.
no, we just found out a few weeks ago, and we want to make
Like
sure we
last week,
do it
actually.
correctly. So,
Right,
I mean,
But wouldn't it be nice if we would have known a few weeks ago, hey, guys, sorry, we messed up. We're trying to figure out how to get it back to everyone. We want to be transparent. We have a new city administrator. This is happening.
it's on this budget document though. As soon as they found out about this and started talking about it, they put it down on the budget document.
In the finance
And
committee.
this body knows before the council even knows about it.
But what I'm saying is that prevents 200 people from coming in here. You know, if
No, I hear what you're
it's
saying.
transparency, and even when it's uncomfortable, to be transparent. I mean, that's how you win a jury
Right.
case, is you got to put your uncomfortable stuff out there right in the beginning. The worst thing is of your client. You don't wait for it to somehow come up in the middle of a testimony.
Right, but I don't know why you think as soon as we found out, before we even knew the path forward on it, or that we could afford it, that we should have put it out to the public? I understand what you're saying 100%, but we were getting the information and how we were going to actually pay the debt back before we could say that we're going to
Yeah.
give you your money back.
Yeah. Okay.
That was this part of it, is that we have to make sure that we have, I mean, we're going to pay it back and we're going to say, we're sorry. And yes, we found this and we did this, but until we knew this part of it, that we actually have a line item and we're able to balance our budget with that in it, we can't very well go say we're going to give money back that we don't know where it's coming from. that we have it. So we have to figure out what we're going to cut or what we're going to not get to make sure that that's in the budget.
It was a goal of the finance committee to forward that money back.
And they, yeah.
And we
the
put it
finance
in the
committee
budget.
Called me and was like, oh yeah, you guys
Yeah.
don't have a good feeling you got about it? Me neither. So we need to figure out how to
We
make
need-
it happen.
we need a reporter to sit in on every meeting to report.
There's a lot of things that happen in the city too, like this finance committee meeting. They can't tell the rest of us counselors because of the
Right.
quorum. And so like this is sort of like the first time we're hearing about it, the rest of us. So it's not like just like you're talking to your friends and you want to be honest. It's like there's all these rules and ways that
We
to
get
be
pulled in by the
transparent, we're
ordinance
talking about it
committee if
in
we
this
form a
meeting.
quorum. And that can be fines or it could be jail time if that's what they decide. And beyond that, then there's items that are discussed in executive session, which we can talk to nobody about.
Right,
And it's
right.
hard to, you can't explain the full situation
Right.
unless you could actually reach back and explain some of that.
So hypothetically speaking, if there was insurance that the city had, if an employee does something unethical that is discussed in executive committee, does that insurance actually cover things like a $39,000 error? Is there another way to maybe get that $39,000? Because I thought those liability insurances sometimes covered things that you found out later, but again, just hypothetically speaking.
Need a lawyer probably to sort through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked you to answer it though.
Well, and I called CIS when I realized this and said, how do we deal with this? What's the best way to do this? And that answer basically was, when you get legal counsel, you need to talk to legal counsel and ask them how it's best to do it. Because we've had these discussions. Is it better to do a credit on your water bill? Is it better to just cut a check? How do we not get ourselves in an unethical situation in trying to do this? And it was also, you have to make sure you have the money for the budget to give back, to do it, so that we can do that. There's also a question of, it's hard to not point fingers at past people or whatever, because then they could come back and say, no, you're slandering my name and you wrote it down, so it's liable.
It won't allow us to do that.
Yeah, no.
And so I'm hypothetically, that could be an issue, right? And so it's just, everything about this is like a tightrope over crocodiles, it feels like. And so this is trying to be as transparent as possible to get it out as soon as we realized what happened, and that it shouldn't have.
And people haven't been paying for a long time. They haven't been paying for what it costs for the water, as expensive as it is. It'd be another $100 a month that everybody'd have to pay that would go into the infrastructure and repair everything.
And therein lies the problem. Everybody could pay $1,000 a month and we wouldn't be able
Still
to
wouldn't
touch
do
the
it.
infrastructure for 25 years.
I think it was $1 million at I remember figuring that out,
Oh, for the,
of what it cost to get $1 million. And yeah, if we had been doing that all along, then there'd maybe be the money to pay for the infrastructure. But that it costs something like that in order to do it. And everybody,
200 million.
I mean, all the cities would like to have grants and have somebody else pay for their water, but really each city should be paying for their own water.
how much did we pay for the outfall, the first outfall?
Oh, gosh, I don't even remember.
But I mean, that's a pretty good chunk in this 20-year picture of, there's been these big things that have happened that have taken away from that reserve. And it's not all, it's just some things have hit the fan and
We really couldn't afford, for such a small town and as much pipe as there is, we shouldn't have ever put the water plant in. There would have not been any way of knowing that at the time.
And I used to not believe that statement that Gary's saying, but I honestly, I've been doing some research on these cities. Cities large and small are struggling to run their water and sewer plants. And when I say struggling, they're struggling exactly like we are. They're coming up short and they don't know how to do it. And I'm starting to believe the statement Gary's saying. We're almost too small to run our current water and sewer system.
And there would have been fewer people living here if everybody was on wells.
We'd be like
Properties would have
Langlois
been bigger.
instead.
Sounds like a pretty good justification for rate raises. Sorry.
But Pat, just to say, I just looked up that sewer revenue bonds, you know, we still have to pay. I mean, the amounts we still have to pay are coming down and down and down, but we still have years to pay. But once we're done with them, you know,
Right. No, I just
have another
meant like deferred maintenance when you're paying that. And like, and I think most of the deferred maintenance, especially for Dave can attest more than anybody, like those lean years, like you're going to defer maintenance. It makes it to where everything, it feels like maintenance, but really it's just the emergency that happened this month that you have no choice but what to fix. And then as public works, you kind of get into a habit where you stop asking for things unless it's an emergency, you know? Well, hopefully if we're being fiscal.
okay, one other question, I'm sorry, didn't we have to do the second part of the hummus pond this year? Wasn't that like,
We can
didn't,
put it off, I think, John said,
John says we can put it off again, the second half? Okay,
because we need to get on it, but
we put it off till next year? Okay, thank you.
We had them strip out as many of the projects as we could before we got started on the $600,000 shortfall.
Yeah.
So
That was that prioritization and like trying to be strategic to say, what do we have to get done?
Yeah.
And the things that are in here are the things that he said they have to be done.
And the finance committee did move over $500,000 around, which is pretty damn impossible when you have such a tight budget.
I still don't know how David did it, to be honest with you.
So it wasn't the finance.
We're a
committee.
half an hour past our 2-hour meeting. I don't feel we should open up another fund, but I'll leave it up to you folks if you want to open another.
I think we did really well.
Did you vote on the,
Yeah, 5-1.
oh, that's right. Okay, sorry. Let's see.
Well, we could almost do
We can do
knock
the
off
next
the water
one.
reserve.
Water reserve is.
Zero.
should
Want
be
to do
easy.
that?
Move to approve the water capital reserve fund as presented. Sorry to keep all taking on the firsts, but.
Okay,
And the only reason I'm saying that right off the bat is because these are pretty fixed numbers.
right.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Okay, so we have a first and a second on that. Any discussion? Melissa, do you have some notes on that reserve fund?
Yeah, hold on a second.
So basically, this reserve fund has been stripped to zero.
Yes, that's really the notes.
So these are the things that keep me up at night, to be honest with you.
Right. Yeah,
This
page
is
15, and yeah,
stuff
I wrote
above.
that note. Page
To have that
15
fund at
equals,
zero is.
yeah, page 15 equals 0.
That's what that
Snarly
increase
face.
is. I mean, without that increase, we're way.
That's
So
what,
what do we do? I mean, this happens all the time when we have some like lift station go down. Well, that's in the sewer side, but we have some massive problem that's not
That's the
budgeted
issue,
for.
that's the
The dire
the issue.
straits that we're in.
No, I know, but
That's what we're
so-
talking about, like these major things that have to be done, then we're gonna not do the roof again, or we're gonna not do a whatever to fix the whatever it is and pour more clamps in the ground.
so
And that's
David-
also why Dave padded the contingencies and pulled it out of the unappropriated too, is just to have more actionable money in those funds.
So David left us in really good condition when he left.
Yeah.
So we basically have got to this because of inflation, because of attorney cost, personnel cost.
Content.
I think we were non-budgeted for some of the engineering, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yep.
And the reason, you know, you keep hearing COVID, because I feel like it goes back to that point. Without having a person giving us a finance report every month, we just have to trust that what's coming out of the office is what's coming out of the office.
And the content tank killed us too.
And the contact tank killed us. we had money for that too.
Mhm.
We took the meter money and used it for that. So, but we didn't take the reserves.
Mm-mm.
So like I said, when David left, we were in much, much better position. So, and that was my statement when we first started this and how I opened the meeting, that as ugly as this looks, next year will be better and the year after will be better. But if we don't get there, we're just, I don't even know what happens. I mean, even when we had a bad budget year years ago, in my mind, I'd have to go back and pull my book. It didn't seem quite this bad. Do you recall, David?
This is the worst I ever seen.
Yeah. So we have a motion and a second on the reserves. The reserves have been reduced to zero. If there's no other comments, I'll call for the vote on that. Corey,
Yes.
Ann,
Yes.
Pat,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Greg,
Yes.
Tim, yes.
I don't see us banging through the sewer enterprise one really fast. I mean, the full sewer
Yeah.
one, not the.
Yeah, we can either start it or we can end here, whatever everybody
I
wants
think
to
I'm
do.
ready to end.
When are you guys?
When do you have to leave? Ann and, is it Gary? No, Tim.
I'm leaving on like June 6th.
Oh, we'll be okay. We'll be wrapped up by then.
Well, I just want to make sure we're done by the 3rd of June because
Right.
that's like the last day. So I want, and I forget, you're leaving the 10th or something?
8th.
8th.
So I think
The 9th.
I think 2 more meetings tops.
1 to 2 more meetings, yeah,
Yeah.
probably.
Okay.
Can I ask real quick, just what happened in the parks line item since I wasn't here? I saw one.
I will stay and talk to you. Maybe we don't have to do it with everyone. I'll because I apologize for not
No, you're fine.
reminding you or, yep, absolutely. I'll do that with you.
It worked. We were like, we gotta tell Greg the meeting's at 5:30 because we know we're gonna do the park fund. It worked like a charm.
So are we leaving these again?
Please leave those again.
Okay.
Did you see the budget? Leave your pens and papers.
No, I know.
Try to leave two.
Okay.
You can use them here, wouldn't you? Use them.
So I guess we'll end the City of Port Orford Budget Committee meeting today, and we will meet on Wednesday,
Nope.
the 23rd.
Wednesday or Thursday?
I think it's Thursday, the 23rd.
Is it Thursday, the 23rd?
At 4:30.
Yeah, because you get 2 days for him in between, just in case there was anything to change. So you have Tuesday, Wednesday off, and then Thursday, the 23rd.
Okay, Thursday, the 23rd at 4:30.
Yes.
Meeting adjourned.
That was
Thank
not
you.
a very good tap, Tim.
I know, not
Hey.
compared to yours.